Chapter 1270. Lu Shi and Holy Princess looked at each other again. Both of them had made up their minds. Lu Shi's face grew colder. He said in an unfriendly tone, "Soul search? Patriarch Ling, are you suspecting that we killed Brother Fidu?" "I am not suspecting." Ling Hong waved his hand. "I am suspecting anyone who comes out from the tomb of King Luna. I am not the person. My son died a horrible death. To seek justice for him, I will have to wrong you, Shi and Jingyao." Lu Shi snorted. "What if we don't want to be wronged? Are you going to kill us, Patriarch Ling? Disciples of the Pavilion of Misty Drizzle are not pushovers. We prefer death to humiliation." For the first time, Holy Princess spoke. "I have always respected you from the Cabinet of Cloud. But if you want to search my soul, I would rather die than be humiliated." "What?" The onlookers outside the valley were stirred. They did not expect to witness such an exciting event. Cabinet of Cloud, Pavilion of Misty Drizzle, and Palace of Snow Mountain were going to fight? This was big news in the divinity. Killing intent surged out from Ling Hong. He had just lost his son and he was extremely depressed. If it were not for the fact that Lu Shi and Holy Princess were of high status, he would have killed them. A patriarch of the Cabinet of Cloud said in a hurry, "Shi Jingyao, Brother Hong has just lost his son. Can't you be a bit more modest? Cabinet of Cloud, Pavilion of Misty Drizzle, and Palace of Snow Mountain have been good friends for generations. You know Fidu as well. Theoretically speaking, you should help us find the murderer. Didn't your seniors tell you that disciples of the 72 sects should help each other and be united?" "Ha ha!" Lu Shi sneered. "Helping each other and being united is what we should do. But that does not include allowing anyone to search our soul. We would have no privacy at all. This is the biggest insult to our dignity. My grandpa once told me that disciples of Pavilion of Misty Drizzle can die but never be humiliated." Holy Princess added, "Patriarch Lingang, we have no quarrel with young Master Fidu. Why do we have to kill him? Even if there were grievances or grudges, we would only ask the elders to help us. How could we kill them in private? We all know the secret rules between the sections. We absolutely cannot kill a core disciple. Our elders have often warned us about this. Please forgive us, but we cannot accept the soul-searching. We can swear an almighty oath that we did not kill Ling Fidu or else we will die a horrible death." Ling Gang and the other High Heaven Pavilion elders glanced at each other, their faces showing some belief. After all, a main god blood oath was not something that could be casually made. This was a blood oath of the highest standard in the god realm. Throughout history, many powerhouses who had violated it had died tragically. Lu Shi shrugged. "I can take an almighty oath that I did not kill Ling Fidu." Ling Gang turned to look at Ling Hong. The latter's expression did not ease. He said coldly, "I don't care if you killed him or not. Stay here for the time being. None of you are allowed to leave. It won't be too late to leave after everything is investigated." "What?" Lu Shi pulled a long face. His eyes were filled with defiance. He crushed a blood-red jade talisman in his hand and then took out his saber. Pointing at Ling Hong, he said, "Cabinet of Cloud, don't you think you have gone too far? Do you really think we, Pavilion of Misty Drizzle, are pushovers? Disciples of Pavilion of Misty Drizzle, listen up. Follow me and kill anyone who dares to stop us. I, Lu Shi, do not believe that Cabinet of Cloud has the guts to keep us here." Disciples of Pavilion of Misty Drizzle were frightened. What was wrong with Lu Shi? Ling Fidu was dead and Ling Hong had a bad temper. Was Lu Shi courting death? Holy Princess understood that Lu Shi was trying to create a chance for Luli. After all, as long as the situation was not chaotic, Luli would be spotted when he came out. Holy Princess's eyes flickered. If it were not for Luli, they would have been trapped in the tomb of King Luna for at least 1,000 years, if not dead. 1,000 years was precious for a girl. When she came out after 1,000 years, she would be an old lady. On this thought, she made up her mind. Taking out the green twig, she said, "Disciples of the Palace of Snow Mountain, follow me. Let's see if the seniors of Cabinet of Cloud have the guts to kill us. Even though we are all female disciples, we are not weaker than men. Let's go." "How dare you? Are you courting death?" Ling Hong was enraged. He enjoyed a high status in Cabinet of Cloud. Now that he had just lost his son, he was filled with rage and killing intent. Now Lu Shi and Holy Princess, 2 juniors, dared to offend him like this? His anger had been suppressed to the extreme and was about to explode. "Let's go." Lu Shi took the lead and walked out. He was determined. Disciples of Pavilion of Misty Drizzle had been following Lu Shi's lead. They had no choice but to follow him. On the other side, Holy Princess walked out with the female disciples of the Palace of Snow Mountain, toward the disciples of Cabinet of Cloud outside the cave. Hiss, hiss. The onlookers were excited. If the 3 major sects were to fight, it would be a rare event in 1,000 years. What they saw today would be enough for them to brag about for years to come. Ling Gang and the others were taken aback. Their eyes were filled with anger and anxiety. Ling Gang kept glancing at Ling Hong. If Ling Hong could not hold back his anger and killed Holy Princess and Lu Shi, it would lead to a war between the 3 sections. Lu Shi and the others were approaching. The saber in his hand glowed in 5 colors. His armor emerged and he looked determined. The disciples of Pavilion of Misty Drizzle were affected by Lu Shi's vigor. They took out their weapons, ready to fight at any moment. Holy Princess's face was cold. Though she was not as powerful as Lu Shi, her steps were firm. She had been walking side by side with Lu Shi. She stared at Ling Hong with her clear eyes, like a stubborn child. On the other hand, the powerful warriors of Cabinet of Cloud were unsettled. They did not step back, and they were holding weapons in their hand. However, they were much weaker. Killing Lu Shi and Holy Princess in front of so many people was tantamount to declaring war against the 2 major sections. Cabinet of Cloud was not weak. That being said, if Pavilion of Misty Drizzle and Palace of Snow Mountain worked together, Cabinet of Cloud would be reduced to ashes. Ling Hong was well aware of this. The thing was, he could not find a way out. His son had just died. Now, he was forced to step back by 2 juniors? How could he survive in the divinity? The prestige of Cabinet of Cloud would be tarnished as well. His hand glowed in a dark cyan light. Looking at Lu Shi, who was getting closer, Ling Hong was struggling. He could take down Lu Shi and Holy Princess in an instant. However, once the fight started, he could kill people by mistake. What if the situation went out of control? Buzzing. Right at that moment, the space above the valley began to tremble. Following that, Xian Qi in heaven and earth came into being and formed a pair of eyes. A pressure as vast as the blue dome of the sky pressed down, causing everyone in the valley to be unable to breathe. When the eyes came out, Lu Shi crushed another jade talisman in his hand. He knew this was the best time. If Luli could not sneak out, then Lu Shi would not be able to escape. Shi, what is going on? Lu Shi asked in a solemn voice. Cupping his fists, Lu Shi said, "Grandpa, Patriarch Ling suspects that I have killed his son. Not only does he want to search our souls, but he also wants to imprison us. I am about to take someone with me." Grandpa? A name came to many people's mind. Lu Shi's grandpa Lu Tianxing, the master of the Hall of Blood in Pavilion of Misty Drizzle, the most ruthless killer in Pavilion of Misty Drizzle. Chapter 1271. Lu Tianxing's words were domineering. He went to the Cabinet of Cloud alone, and wanted to tear down the Palace of Cloud? But nobody doubted his determination and ability. Lu Tianxing was a famous lunatic in Southern Divinity, and he had done many crazy things. The most important thing was Lu Tianqing's strength. He was ranked 530th on the god list, not much weaker than the cabinet master of the Lingxiao Pavilion. What was more, the fundamental principle he learned was freakish. When he lost his mind, the chief of cabinet of Cloud might not have the courage to fight him in the divinity. Strength was not the scary thing. What was scary was those who did not follow the rules and principles and would lose their minds at the slightest provocation. Lu Tianqing was one of them. Ling Hong and the others looked at the pair of eyes. They felt aggrieved. It was Ling Faidu who was killed. They should be the ones venting their anger. How come they were the ones being suppressed? Buzzing, the space in the cave trembled as Lu Li was teleported out. He activated the cloaking armor at once. He was extremely nervous as well. There were too many powerful warriors out there. He did not dare to move at all. When he was sure that no psychic power was coming, he sneaked out quietly. His steps were light and his speed was slow. He was lucky that everyone outside was distracted by Lu Tianqing. Nobody was paying attention to what was going on in the cave. Ling Hong and the others stared at the pair of eyes. Ling Hong cupped his hands and said, "Senior Tianqing, my son died a horrible death. All the disciples who entered the tomb of King Luna were killed mercilessly. Our pavilion master is furious. If it were Shi and the others, you would be furious as well, right? I don't mean to make things difficult for Shi. I just want them to stay and cooperate with the investigation. When the murderer is found, I will go to the pavilion of Misty Drizzle and ask for forgiveness in person. How about that?" Lu Li had just stepped out of the cave when he suddenly stopped. He felt cold all over. This was because he discovered that the pair of eyes in midair had calmly glanced at him. Just a single glance was enough to make him almost unable to withstand that terrifying aura. If he slumped down and sat down, it was very likely that he would make a sound and be exposed instantly. "Grandpa!" Luckily, Lu Shi shouted all of a sudden. The eyes moved away from Lu Li. Lu Shi cupped his fists and said, "Since Patriarch Ling has said so, Grandpa, don't worry about it. We will cooperate with him." It was understandable that he was in a bad mood after Fei Du's death. "I was also in the wrong just now. It was because of my matter that I alarmed Grandfather. It was 12's fault. Go!" The moment Lu Shi spoke, Lu Li took action again. Lu Shi had created such a good chance for him. If Lu Li didn't seize it, he would be an idiot. Lu Shi was clever with a double meaning. He wanted Lu Tianqing not to pay attention to Lu Li. Lu Tianqing might be a lunatic, but as a super mighty existence of the immortal world, how intelligent was he? Humph! Lu Tianqing sneered. After remaining silent for 10 breaths of time, he said, "I can cooperate with the investigation. However, Ling Hong, you better listen up. I can hit and scold my grandson, but no one else can. Otherwise, humph." In the time for 10 breaths, Lu Li had quietly passed through the encirclement of the powerful warriors of the Cabinet of Heaven. He walked to the edge of the valley and quietly floated towards the outside. He was lucky. Ling Hong and the others were attracted by Lu Tianqing. Also, this time, Cabinet of Heaven didn't send any super mighty warriors from the divinity over. Otherwise, Lu Li would have been noticed as soon as he came out. In the air, that pair of eyes glanced toward the valley. Once again, Lu Li felt a chill. However, the next second Lu Tianqing's eyes vanished. Lu Shi was relieved. He put away his weapons. Just now, he noticed something strange in Lu Tianqing's eyes. Lu Shi knew that Lu Li had escaped from the valley. He glanced at Holy Girl Shui, and the latter understood him tacitly. A faint smile flashed across her lips. She did not know the plan of Lu Li and Lu Shi. That being said, if Lu Li could escape from the valley without anyone noticing, it would be much more difficult for Cabinet of Heaven to hunt him down. Put away your weapons. Work with the seniors of Cabinet of Heaven to find the culprit. Holy Princess waved her hand and walked to the side. Lu Shi came with his team as well. Cabinet of Heaven warriors didn't dare to surround them anymore. After all, Lu Shi and the others were not running away. Ling Gang told them to keep guarding the cave. He patted Ling Hong's shoulder and walked toward Lu Shi. He wanted to ask about the tomb of King Luna. But it was obvious that the disciples of the Palace of Snow Mountain and Pavilion of Misty Drizzle had their memories of Lu Li erased. Cabinet of Heaven did not have the courage to search Holy Princess and Lu Shi's souls. They could get some information but not the culprit. Lu Li had left the valley. He did not stop for a second. He dashed into the distance like a sly fox. Lu Shi told him that there was a black cliff to the northeast tens of millions of years ago. There was an underground black market where one could buy citizenship. Lu Li sped up to the top of his speed. Wearing the cloaking armor, he ran without making any sound. He knew that leaving the valley was not necessarily safe. The warlord skeleton and the wicked bead were loopholes. Besides, God of Wings was outside the tomb of King Luna. Who knew if she had returned to the office of creation or not? By then, Cabinet of Heaven could use their influence to investigate. Once God of Wings exposed his identity, the entire southern divinity would be searching for him. Lu Shi and the others had gone overboard with their acting. Ling Hong and the others might not suspect anything for a while, but they would after a while. If Lu Li could not join the Chamber of Relics before Cabinet of Heaven found out, his life would be in danger. Faster, faster, faster. Lu Li did not stop for even a moment. He rushed on. Fortunately, those nearby were all attracted to that valley. There were no wild beasts in the nearby mountains. Lu Li hurried on with ease. Tens of millions of miles was not a long journey. In just over a day, Lu Li found that huge cliff, the Black Cliff. He walked around and soon found some ripples of inhibition formations in a small cave. He also saw some scouts hiding nearby. He circled around and put away the god armor. Dragon armor appeared on his body, and he swaggered into the cave. Before he arrived at the cave, a dark-skinned middle-aged man came out. He looked at Lu Li with alertness and asked, "What brings you here, sir?" "To buy something." Lu Li took out 500 divine sources and threw them over. "My friend said that you have many good things here." "Of course." That dark-skinned middle-aged man beamed when Lu Li gave him 500 divine sources. "We have everything that you cannot buy in the city. Recently, we have a batch of beautiful foxes. Every one of them is a great furnace. Young master, if you are interested, you can have some fun with them." "Ha ha." The dark-skinned middle-aged man showed Lu Li to the cave. As soon as he stepped into the cave, Lu Li felt his vision blurred. He found himself in a hall. There were 2 rows of top-notch beauties standing in the main hall. They were all wearing very revealing clothes. There were 4 corridors in the main hall, most likely leading to different side halls. "Welcome, honorable guest." 10 beautiful women knelt on the ground. Their breasts were exposed and their faces were gentle. Lu Li nodded to himself. The way the black market welcomed guests was not bad. Chapter 1272. Treasures. Lu Li did not have the time or the mood to waste his time. He said coldly. The old man immediately led him to the first corridor on the left. After walking a few hundred feet, they entered a fork in the road and finally entered a side hall. Sitting in the side hall, Lu Li did not want to waste any more time. He cut to the chase. "I want a citizen. What is the price?" "Citizen?" The old man frowned. Lu Li just gave 500 divine sources to the gatekeeper. How could such a rich man not be a citizen? But the old man did not ask further questions. After a pause, he said, "If you want a citizen of the Vicissitude House, it will be cheaper. About 100,000 divine sources. The other prefectures will be more expensive." 100,000? Lu Li curled his lips. He was being treated like a pig. But he had to be humble when he was living under another's roof. He nodded. Okay, 100,000 it is. How long will it take? The old man said after a moment of hesitation, 3 days if you are slow. If you are in a hurry, you will need to add another 20,000 divine sources. You can get it done in half a day. *T. Luli was speechless. The palace of Black Mountain was so evil. How could they extort him? Luli made up his mind. You are being too cruel. 100,000 divine sources for a citizen is fine. Why do you have to delay the time? Young master, it's not that we are ruthless. The old man explained patiently. This thing needs to be done with all kinds of connections, and we also need to send experts to the nearby cities as fast as possible. We also need to pay our respects there, otherwise, okay. 120,000 it is. Do it now. Luli was getting annoyed. His ring glowed as he took out a pile of divine sources, threw them on the ground and said, Here are 50,000 divine sources. Pay the rest when you are done. Okay, no problem. The old man collected all the divine sources. He took out a small bottle and handed it to Luli. Young master, please give me 3 drops of your blood. I will have someone take care of it. It will be done in half a day. Luli gave it 3 drops of blood. Then, he walked out and said, I have something to do. I will come back in half a day. The elder saw Luli off with respect. After Luli walked out and made sure that he was not being followed, the cloaking armor appeared and he became invisible. Then he found a place outside the Black Mountain cliff and sat down with his legs crossed. He was worried about the people of Black Mountain Palace. What if they stole his divine origin and reported it to Blue Flame Manor? At that time, he would be surrounded by a group of official army soldiers while he was sitting inside. He would not be able to escape. Not long afterward, several people flew out from the Black Cliff. They took out a beast of the void and flew away. Luli waited patiently. After half a day, those people came back and entered the cave. Luli waited for a while. He sat outside for a while to make sure that there were no prefecture warriors or pursuing warriors nearby. Then, he revealed himself and went into the cave. The elder took out a cyan jade talisman, handed it to Luli and said, Young master, this is your ID token. With this token, you are a citizen of the Vicissitude House. Luli took over the jade talisman and sensed it. He could feel a spiritual connection with the jade talisman. On the jade talisman were 2 characters, Song Yen, written in bold calligraphy. Luli had seen this jade talisman before. Many prefecture warriors had it. Yes. Luli was relieved to be a citizen. At least, he could go in and out of cities at will and go to the spacetime office. He was not in a hurry to leave. He thought about it and asked, Do you have blood crystals? Luli only had 1 piece of blood crystal left. His biggest weapon, the warlord skeleton, could only be used once. Once he encountered powerful enemies and the last piece of blood crystal was used up, he would have to wait for death. Blood crystal? The elder frowned. He took out a book. He flipped through a few pages, pointed at a red crystal and asked Luli, Is this it? Luli nodded. Yes. What is the price? We don't have it in stock right now. We have to get it from the headquarters. Even if we can get it from the headquarters, there won't be a lot. Blood crystals are rare materials. The elder continued, The price is at least 100,000 divine sources for 1 piece. It will take at least half a year to get it from the headquarters. Young master, if you need it, you can pay a down payment so that I can contact the headquarters. 100,000 divine sources? Luli blinked, speechless. 1 move from the warlord skeleton was equivalent to 100,000 divine sources. What about 100 moves in a row? Wouldn't it cost him 10 million divine sources? Of course, Luli knew that the Black Mountain Palace was an underground black market. Everything could be sold at dozens of times the market price. Not for now. I will come back if I need anything. Right? Can you give me a detailed map of the nearby area? Luli stood up and was ready to leave. The elder handed over a hide scroll from his ring and said with a smile, "This is for free, young master. The Black Mountain Palace welcomes your visit anytime." Luli handed over the rest of the divine sources and walked out. Soon, he went invisible and left the area. He took a detour to make sure that the Black Mountain Palace did not send anyone to follow him. Luli checked the map. The nearest city was hundreds of thousands of miles away. He dared not to linger any longer. He rushed over as fast as he could. Luli arrived at the city after more than 2 hours. He did not go in rashly. Instead, he walked around the city to make sure that everything was normal. Then, he revealed himself and swaggered into the city in a cyan robe. There were guards at the city gate. If Luli had a token of citizenship, the guards would ignore him. If not, the guards would go and check. Luli hung up the token of citizenship and walked into the city in a low profile. The prefecture warriors at the city gate gave him a few glances but did not give him much attention. Luli walked into the city. Okay. The moment he entered the city, Luli was relieved to see the tidy streets and manners. He hurried to the north of the city. The teleportation formations were in the plaza at the north of the city. He had to go to a nearby city and then find the spacetime office. As a matter of fact, he could teleport to the Valley of Relics from other cities, but the distance was too far. It would take him at least a year to reach the Valley of Relics. The Valley of Relics was not in the Vicissitude House, but in the Southern Sun Prefecture, 2 prefectures away from the Vicissitude House. At the plaza at the north, Luli handed over the divine sources and stepped into a teleportation formation. After a blur, he arrived at a huge city. Spacetime Palace. Luli walked out of the teleportation formation. Soon, he was attracted by a huge black castle on the left side of the plaza. There were 3 words carved on the castle: Spacetime Office, Heavenly Fortune Pavilion, Hall of Life and Death, Craftsman's Sect. Luli also saw 3 castles of similar height. The 4 supreme forces all had branches in major cities in the divinity. It seemed that the rumors were true. Go! Chapter 1273. The main gate of the Spacetime Office was impressive and could accommodate more than a dozen people. There were 2 smaller gates on the side, guarded by warriors in red and blue armors. Luli tried to sense their energy. They were more powerful than prefecture warriors. Spacetime Office was indeed resourceful. Luli noticed that nobody was coming in or out of the main gate. Instead, there were people coming in and out of the smaller gate. Luli walked to the small gate and cupped his fists to the 2 escorts. "I want to be teleported to a place. Which gate should I go to?" The escorts were not arrogant. They nodded politely. "Go in here. Someone will receive you." Luli nodded and stepped in. It was a hall with 7 or 8 old men in steward robes. Seeing Luli coming in, a man came to greet him politely. "Honorable guest, how can I help you?" "I want to go to a place, the Valley of Relics." Luli came straight to the point. "The Valley of Relics of the Southern Sun Prefecture?" The old man's hair was combed in an orderly manner. He looked like a gentleman. After Luli gave his consent, the old man said, "If you want to teleport there directly, it will cost you 200,000 divine sources. Is that an acceptable price?" With Luli's consent, the old man made a gesture of invitation and showed Luli inside. There were many tunnels inside. After several turns, Luli arrived at a branch hall. There was a gorgeous altar in the branch hall. There were 4 statues of half-beast and half-human in the front, back, left and right. The altar was covered with patterns like a spider's web, which gave Luli a headache. What a complicated formation! Luli used psychic power to check and exclaimed after a while. Pointing to the altar, the old man said, "Sir, after you hand over the divine sources, we can activate the space-time formation at once to teleport you out of the Valley of Relics. The deviation will not be more than 30 miles. Okay. The famous spacetime office would not lie. Luli handed over the divine sources without hesitation. But he did not step into the altar rashly. Instead, he asked, "Sir, I have a question. If I want to teleport back to the mortal world, how much divine sources will it cost?" "It depends on which universe you are going to." The old man answered politely. "Usually, to the mortal world, it will cost at least hundreds of millions of divine sources. If the universe is remote, it may cost 1 billion or even 10 billion divine sources. If you are just sending some relics back, the cost will be lower." Luli was taken aback. Ling Faidu, a young master of the Cabinet of Cloud, only had 300,000 divine sources. Luli had to kill so many people to get 500,000 divine sources. It was not easy to get divine sources. A trip back to the Earth Imperial Universe would cost at least hundreds of millions of divine sources, or even billions. He was not going to find people like Ling Faidu to kill. How many people would he have to kill to gather 100 million divine roots? I understand. Thank you very much. Please teleport me to the Valley of Artifacts. Luli clasped his fists. He would not go back for the time being. He must establish himself in the divinity and avoid the pursuit of the Cabinet of Cloud. Luli stepped into the altar. The old warrior waved his hand. 4 white-robed and white-haired old warriors walked in. They released divine energy in their hands and struck at the 4 statues. Buzz! Soon, the statues lit up, and so did the patterns on the altar. The light grew brighter and brighter. Luli felt the world was occupied by white. He trembled and vanished into the altar. After a long time, maybe a couple of hours, maybe a day or two, Luli finally felt his feet touch the ground. He collapsed to the ground, feeling dizzy. After the time for a dozen breaths, Luli finally came back to his senses. He shook his head and used psychic power. He found himself in a forest. Luckily, there were no wild beasts nearby, or else he would have been attacked. That being said, he had a supreme relic armor. The average wild beasts could not kill him. After a moment of rest, Luli stood up. He went into stealth mode and wandered around. A moment later, he found himself at the entrance of a huge valley. On the 2 sides of the valley were 2 huge mountains. At the entrance of the valley was a magnificent city wall. On the wall were 3 words written in flamboyant calligraphy: Valley of Artifacts. The teleportation altar of the Spacetime Office is impressive. There is no teleportation formation here, but they can send people here unilaterally, Luli exclaimed to himself. He frowned as he looked at the crowd outside the city wall gate. Why were there so many people sitting outside? How could the Valley of Artifacts allow people to harass them? Buzzing. He put away the soul concealment armor and slowly walked over in an ordinary green robe. 2 more days. This is a long wait. You don't even have this much patience and you want to join the Chamber of Artifacts? Do you know that the most important thing in forging artifacts is patience? Without patience, you will never achieve anything when you study inhibition formations. Right. I have been waiting here for months. Can't I wait for 2 more days? To become a respectable craftsman in the Southern Divinity, the only way is to join the Chamber of Artifacts. In 2 days, the Chamber of Artifacts will start to recruit disciples. I wonder what the test will be. I have failed 9 times in a row. If I fail this time, I will never be able to join the Chamber of Artifacts. I, Lu Dehua, am confident that I will join the Chamber of Artifacts and become a craftsman. Not only will I become a craftsman, I will become a craftsman step by step, a master craftsman, and then a master craftsman. Eventually, I will join the craftsman's sect and have my way in the divinity. Before Luli got closer, he could hear the chatter. Thousands of people were sitting there. It would be difficult for them to keep quiet. 2 days later. Just in time. Luli was delighted. He stopped and listened carefully. He wanted to get more information so that he could join the Chamber of Artifacts without any risk. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Right at that moment, from the path behind Luli came some noises, as well as some muffled footsteps. Luli did not notice because he was distracted. By the time he came back to his senses and turned around, he saw a team of white shadows rushing toward him. The one at the front was about to bump into him. "Get lost!" a girl shouted. Then a white whip lashed out at Luli's face. "What?" Luli pulled a long face. He almost let out the immortal's body. But at this critical moment, he swallowed his anger and turned to the side to dodge the whip. Slap! The whip didn't land on Luli's face, but on his shoulder. Luli was smashed away by the force and rolled to the side. Hiss, hiss. The white shadows all stopped. Luli got up and glanced over. He saw many white unicorns, and on the unicorns there were people, all of them beautiful young ladies. The unicorn at the front was handsome, and the lady on it was beautiful as well. She was wearing a white, revealing soft armor. Her chest and smooth abdomen were exposed. She was also wearing a leather armor skirt and leather boots, revealing her perfectly round and straight long legs. Chapter 1274. Luli was angry. Why would he stand in the middle of the road? It was a plain with roads everywhere. Why couldn't they take a detour? Why would they bump into him and whip him? The girl was pretty but short-tempered. Luli was disgusted by her spoiled manner. In addition to her, the 7 young ladies were also looking at him with disdain. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A team of warriors rushed over. They dropped to one knee in front of the yellow-dressed lady and said, "Greetings, Lady Dan." "Ladies." "Lady Dan?" Luli showed no emotion. This Lady Dan must be a young lady from a big shot's family in the Chamber of Relics. Those young ladies must be from prestigious families in the Chamber of Relics. The warriors saluted. Their leader looked at Luli and said, "Lady Dan, do you need us to drive him away?" "Never mind." Seeing that Luli did not talk back, Lady Dan waved her hand and said, "Let's go. Let's go." "What bad luck!" Lady Dan dashed away with the female warriors. The warriors threw Luli a cold glance and then rushed toward the city gate. Luli was frustrated. Those warriors must have remembered him. If he wanted to join the Chamber of Relics, it would be much more difficult. He might not even have the chance to pass the assessment. **T. This is so frustrating. Luli clenched his fists. If he had a choice, he would turn around and leave. He would never join the Chamber of Relics. He had no choice but to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. He had nowhere else to go, so he could only walk to the back of the crowd and sit down quietly. From the distance came people in 2s and 3s. Some were young and some were middle-aged. They all found a place to sit. 2 days later, the number of people outside the Valley of Relics had reached 10,000. Today, the gate of the Valley of Relics was opened. Out came 10 old men in black robes and teams of warriors in white robes. Some were young and some were middle-aged. They must be disciples of the Chamber of Relic. In total, there were over 100 of them. Swish, swish, swish. Tens of thousands of people stood up nervously. The Chamber of Relics was recruiting disciples once a year. There were tens of thousands of people here, but in the end, only dozens of people could join the Chamber of Relics, or even fewer. Everyone was naturally very nervous. "Hello everyone. I'm Elder Tian Haiqiang of the Artifact Pavilion. You can call me Elder Tian." A dignified old man pressed his hand down and suppressed the noise. He glanced around and said, "The annual disciple recruitment ceremony of the Chamber of Relics has begun. I won't waste any more time. I just want to say that everything will be done according to the rules of our Artifact Pavilion. If anyone tries to cause trouble, don't blame us for dealing with them according to the rules. As you all know, our Artifact Pavilion focuses on refining weapons. Therefore, the comprehension of formations and restrictions, as well as the talent in this area, are very important. Next, there will be 2 tests. If you can pass these 2 tests, you will be able to enter the Valley of Artifacts for the last test. If you pass the test, you will become a registered disciple of the Hall of Artifacts and have the opportunity to learn how to forge weapons. After a long speech, Patriarch Tion waved his hand and said, "Now, the first test will begin. Later, we will build a formation of illusion to trap all of you in. Only those who can walk out in 2 hours will pass the first test." Formation of illusion? Luli was delighted. Since the Bloodvine was so good at breaking formations, this test would not be too difficult. He would be able to walk out in 2 hours. No, I must get out as soon as I can. Luli thought about it. 2 days ago, he offended that Lady Dan, and some warriors bore grudges against him. Luli must be capable enough to ensure that he could join the Chamber of Relics without fail. Blood Fairy, later, there will be a formation of illusion. You must crack it at once and help me out, Luli told Blood Fairy. He took out the wicked bead and held it in his hand. Blood Fairy hurriedly extended her tentacles into his body. Finally, she quietly reached into the ground. Okay, activate the formation of illusion. Patriarch Tion waved his hand. The 10 white-robed disciples behind him came over and stood in a corner. They took out many formation stones and some other strange items to set up. Rise. A moment later, a disciple shouted. Luli and the others were enveloped by the white haze and disappeared. Rustle, rustle, rustle. At the city gate came some footstep. Lady Dan came out with a group of girls. She walked to Patriarch Tion and asked with a smile, "Uncle Tion, are there any good ones this time?" "Nonsense." Patriarch Tion pretended to be angry. "Lady Dan, you should call me Grandpa Tion based on my age. Don't be so rude. I will tell your grandpa on you." "Ha ha." Lady Dan stuck out her pink tongue. Gazing into the white haze, she grabbed the 2 braids by her ears and said, "Patriarch Tion, let's make a bet. If someone can walk out in the time for 1 incense stick to burn, I will call you Grandpa Tion. How about that?" The time for 1 incense stick to burn? Patriarch Tion frowned. Rolling his eyes, he said, "This is not fair. You are cheating. Where can you find so many talents in inhibition formations?" "I don't care." Lady Dan twitched her pretty nose and said in a spoiled manner, "You are old, but in terms of seniority, you are of the same generation as my father. I will be at a disadvantage if I call you Grandpa. Do you want to make the bet?" Patriarch Tion suddenly turned to the white haze. His eyes glowed as he said, "Okay, I will make the bet." Lady Dan was delighted. "Don't go back on your word or I will burn down your house." "Ha ha ha." Patriarch Tion laughed. Lady Dan looked. Someone is coming out. Lady Dan and the others were taken aback. They turned to the white haze. The white haze parted and a young man in a cyan robe walked out. "What? It's him." Lady Dan pulled a long face. It was the white-haired young man that she almost bumped into a couple of days ago. She pouted and said, "No, he cannot come to the Chamber of Relics. He does not count." "Does not count?" Luli had just stepped out of the formation of illusion when he heard Lady Dan's words. To ensure that he could enter the Chamber of Relics, he used the Bloodvine. In the time for half an incense stick to burn, he had the Bloodvine guide him out of the formation of illusion. Little did he expect that as soon as he came out, he would run into this unruly young lady who said that he could not join the Chamber of Relics. Luli was enraged. The stubbornness and pride in his bones were triggered. Glaring at Lady Dan, he said, "The Chamber of Relics, a super sect at the Southern Divinity, is treating the recruitment ceremony like a child's play?" Patriarch Tion said that we should follow the rules. I am following the rules. Where are the rules of the Chamber of Relics? By saying that the Chamber of Relics did not follow the rules, Luli was basically slapping Lady Dan in the face in public. He was implying that she had forgotten the public for personal reasons and had broken the Chamber of Relics' reputation. Lady Dan understood what Luli was implying. She glared at him and said, "Who do you think you are? How can you be so presumptuous? Do you have a death wish?" "Enough!" Patriarch Tion shouted. "Someone, bring Lady Dan in. The Chamber of Relics has its own rules. I am in charge of this recruitment ceremony. Lady Dan, if you dare to make a scene again, I will report to the chief and punish you severely." Okay. Lady Dan burst into tears. She glared at Luli and then rushed into the Valley of Relics with the female warriors. Patriarch Tion calmed down a bit. Looking at Luli gently, he said, "Young man, the Chamber of Relics has its own rules. You have done well. You have passed the first test." Patriarch Tion was reasonable and polite. But Luli noticed that many disciples of the Chamber of Relics were looking at him with hostility. Thinking of that unruly Lady Dan, Luli had second thoughts. Chapter 1275. Luli stood on the side. He was struggling. He was in a dilemma. If he did not join the Chamber of Relics, he would not know where to run to. Given Cabinet of Cloud's influence, it was only a matter of time before they found him. By then, he would have to face dozens of mighty warriors and hundreds of immortals on the list. Not even the Emperor of Heaven Reverse could survive. If he joined the Chamber of Relics, he could imagine that his future would not be easy. He might be tortured to death by that unruly young lady. Lady Dan must have enjoyed a high status in the Chamber of Relics since she dared to speak so boldly in front of patriarchs. Patriarch Tion had scolded her in front of Luli. She must have cursed Luli for hundreds of times. Never mind. "I will endure it." After much thought, Luli made up his mind and decided to stay. If he left the Chamber of Relics, he would die for sure. If he stayed, he might have a chance of survival. He could not risk his life and he could not be impulsive. If he died, Jiang Qiling, by Qiushue, and by Xiaoshuang would not be able to survive. Time moved on. More people came out from the haze. 2 hours later, 500 to 600 had come out. Okay. Deactivate the formation. Patriarch Tion gave the order when the time was up. 10 disciples deactivated the formation. Those in there were crestfallen and disappointed. "Okay. Guys, you have failed this time. Please go back." Patriarch Tion waved his hand. Some warriors started to clear the place. Those people did not want to leave, but they left reluctantly. Originally, there were many people standing outside, but now more than half of them had left, leaving the place empty. Patriarch Tion looked to Luli and the hundreds and said, "Okay. Next, we will have the second test, which is to crack the formation. But this time, you will have to crack the formation alone, an entrapment formation. Each of you has the time for 1 incense stick to burn. You will be lucky if you can get out of the entrapment formation in the time for 1 incense stick to burn. Let's begin. Set up the formation." Patriarch Tion waved his hand. Over 100 disciples moved. They went to the front and began to set up. In total, 100 disciples set up 100 small formations. Luli stared at them and observed every step. Once he knew how to set up the formation, it would be much easier for him to crack it. Luli watched carefully and committed every step to memory. His eyebrows were knitted together because the formation was not complicated at all. However, the materials used by the Divine Artifact Pavilion disciples were very special. What's more, they seemed to have the effect of strengthening the formation. The array looked very simple, but it was actually very strong. Once it was activated, it would be very difficult to break the array with brute force. Moreover, it would be done within the time it took for an incense stick to burn. If I use the War God skeleton, I should be able to break it in 1 move. Luli felt it was a shame. He could not use the Warlord skeleton, the Immortal's body, and the Deaf Taoist. Given his abilities, it would be hard for him to crack the formation. All right, the first 100 will enter. Patriarch Tion saw that it was about time. He waved his hand and Luli and the others walked into the small formation. The disciple outside poured out divine energy. A dark halo came out and covered Luli up. The world in front of Luli turned dark. He was trapped in a black halo. The only way to get out was to break the formation. Blood Fairy, break the formation! Luli was not worried when he saw the black halo. Instead, he was delighted. Those outside could not see what was going on inside, and Blood Fairy could hide better. Blood Fairy reached in with her tentacle. A moment later, Luli heard her voice in his mind. Master, this is strange. This formation is much easier than the first one. Even those who know something about formations can crack it. I think there is something wrong. Easier than the first one? Luli frowned. This did not make sense. The second one must be harder than the first one. Otherwise, what was the point of the test? Why couldn't they just let the hundreds of people pass? There must be something wrong. Don't move, Luli said after a moment of thought. Then, he began to think. He used psychic power to check the small formation. He thought quickly, trying to figure out what the problem was. Time moved on. Luli was not worried at all. The formation could be cracked at any time. If he could not figure out what the problem was, he would not be able to pass the test even after he cracked the formation. I cannot pass? Luli suddenly slapped his head. He had an epiphany. He remembered Patriarch Tion's last words. Everyone had the time for one incense stick to burn. Walking out of the formation in the time for one incense stick to burn would be good enough. For the first one, Patriarch Tion made it clear that walking out of the formation in 2 hours was enough to pass the test. But for the second one, Patriarch Tion said walking out of the formation was good enough? In other words, walking out of the formation in the time for one incense stick to burn did not mean passing the second test. The formation could trap people, but it could also trap the mind. What a sly old fox! Luli exclaimed to himself. Usually, people would have the same mindset. The first one was to crack the formation, and the second one was to crack the formation as well. Time was tight. They would try their best to get out of the formation as soon as possible. Nobody noticed the trap in Patriarch Tion's words. To pass the second test, it seemed that the formation could not be cracked, or the time for one incense stick to burn must be passed. Luli made up his mind. He waited quietly. After the time for one incense stick to burn, he threw out some formation stones and poured out divine energy to let Blood Fairy crack the formation secretly. Buzzing! The dark shield disappeared. Almost at the same time, over 20 people had cracked the formation. They had almost reached the same time as Luli. As for the others, they had all cracked the formation. Okay. Patriarch Tion looked at Luli and the other over 20 people with a smile. You have passed the second test. The others who cracked the formation earlier have failed. What? The over 70 warriors who had cracked the formation earlier were stunned. They had been looking at Luli and the others with disdain. They did not expect that they would be the ones disqualified. Why? Right. Didn't we crack the formation? I cracked it in the time for half an incense stick to burn. Why did we fail? That's right, that's right. Is the Chamber of Relics so unreasonable? Many people shouted at once, unwilling to accept the result. Some of them seemed to be thinking about something and regretted it. Did I say that cracking the formation in the time for one incense stick to burn can pass the test? Think back to what I said. Patriarch Tion said coldly. You want to become craftsmen, but you cannot even see through a simple trap? Inhibition formations are a setup and a trap. If you cannot even see through a word game, you will not have a bright future as craftsmen. Many people came back to their senses. None of them dared to shout anymore. They were still angry, but no one dared to talk back. Let's go. Patriarch Tion waved his hand. the warriors started to drive away the over 70 people. Looking at the hundreds who had not taken the test, Patriarch Tion said, "It is your turn. 100 of you will start the second round." Lu Li and the other over 20 people looked at each other in relief. They knew something was wrong, and they remembered Patriarch Tion's words. That being said, it was a gamble for them to crack the formation after the time for one incense stick to burn. It was risky. Chapter 1276. The rest of the tests were of different styles. But there was one thing in common: there were all kinds of situations and traps. This level was not a test of one's ability to crack formations, but one's ability to solve situations. It was a test of one's ability to see through traps and plots. The result was tragic. Out of the 500 or 600 people, only about 100 passed the test. This was only the second test. If dozens of people were eliminated in the third test, only dozens of people would be able to join the Chamber of Relics out of the 10,000 people. The elimination rate was too high. Those who were eliminated would be driven away immediately. They would not even have the chance to watch the fun. When the last batch of people finished their assessment, Elder Tion waved his hand and said, "All right, those who passed the assessment, follow us into the Valley of Artifacts to begin the final round of assessment. As long as you pass, you will become a registered disciple of the Hall of Artifacts." They followed Patriarch Tion to the Valley of Relic. Over 100 disciples were guarding the perimeter. Clearly, they were on guard in case Lu Li and the others went in and caused trouble. Wow, the Valley of Relics is huge. As soon as Lu Li and the others entered the city, they saw many castles. The castles were not built close to each other. There were castles here and there. They could not see the end of the Valley of Relics. It did not look like a city, but a huge tribe formed by many villages. The view in the Valley of Relics was beautiful. There was even a stream. Lu Li and the others walked along the main road in the middle. They noticed something interesting. People in the Valley of Relics were busy. They walked in but did not attract much attention. Many people were living in the castles and did not come out to watch the fun. Some people were in a hurry. They just threw a glance at Lu Li and the others, not paying much attention. The buildings in the Valley of Relics seemed to be unorganized, but the people here seemed to be busy. Many people were worried. Lu Li even saw someone reading a book by the roadside. The others did not pay attention when they passed by. "It seems that everyone here is obsessed." Lu Li nodded. The atmosphere in the Chamber of Relics was pleasant. Most of the people here must be craftsmen. All of them were focused on forging artifacts and inhibition formations. Being obsessed with something was the easiest way to achieve success. Otherwise, how could one make good relics by playing around all day? The group walked for an hour before they finally arrived at a large square. There were numerous furnaces placed on the small square, and there were numerous tools and divine materials and crystals piled up on the ground at the side. Elder Tion led the crowd over. He glanced at the crowd and said, "The last assessment, refining weapons." As you all know, our artifact pavilion is famous in the south of the Divine Realm for our artifact refining. Equipment refiners have a prominent status everywhere. If you want to join our artifact pavilion, you must have some understanding of artifact refining. The last assessment is artifact refining. Of course, I won't ask you to refine a divine artifact. You only need to refine a divine artifact embryo within 3 days. We will evaluate the artifact embryos you make and choose the best half. The best half will be able to join our artifact pavilion. As for the remaining half, I'll have to ask you to leave with regret, so please do your best this time. Lu Li's expressions changed. He knew nothing about forging artifacts. All the books he read from Tian Lingzi were about inhibition formations. There were many books about forging in that hall, but he hadn't read a single one of them. Oh no! Lu Li felt bitter to see that many people had a well-thought-out plan. Everyone here should have come prepared. He was the only one who came here without knowing anything. Of course, the Chamber of Relics was recruiting disciples to test their basic skills. Those people must have learned to forge artifacts for some time. He was the only one who knew nothing. What should I do? Lu Li frowned. Was he going to fail on the verge of success? What should he do if he could not join the Chamber of Relics? Nearly 100 people would be working on artifacts at the same time. In 3 days, the final products would be presented for evaluation. The better half would stay and the worse half would leave. He did not even know how to forge artifacts. What could he make? He didn't even know how to operate those furnaces. *T. I will have to learn on the spot. Lu Li thought about it. He had no other choice but to learn secretly. He could only learn from the people around him how to forge tools. He wanted to see if he could forge a tool embryo within 3 days. Okay, let's pick a furnace. Patriarch Tian waved his hand and added, "We have prepared dozens of materials and crystals for you. You can refine any embryo you want. You can decide the details. We only care about the result, the quality of the product. Okay, start the countdown." Many people picked a furnace in a hurry and began to check the furnace, the materials and crystals in preparation. Lu Li picked a furnace in the middle. He pretended to check the materials while he used psychic power to check the surroundings. Someone had turned on the furnace. Lu Li checked with psychic power to see how the furnace was turned on. While Lu Li was observing others, he did not know that many people were observing him as well. Those who were observing him were not the participants, but those from the Chamber of Relics. Patriarch Tian and the others would check with psychic power from time to time. Lu Li was the first in the first round and he was one of the first to pass the second round. Given his conflict with Lady Dan, it was hard for him not to attract attention. What? Patriarch Tian and the others noticed that Lu Li had been checking the materials without doing anything. He was even secretly looking around. Does he not know how to forge artifacts? Patriarch Tian had a question. If Lu Li knew how to forge artifacts, why was he looking around? Why was he not doing anything when others had started? More than half of the nearly 100 people had turned on the furnace. The others began to take action as well. Finally, Lu Li did something. He opened the lid of the furnace and poured out some divine energy. However, he failed. Well, he has never learned how to forge artifacts. Lu Li pretended to be calm, but his palms were sweating. He poured out more divine energy, but he could not even turn on the switch under the furnace. Lu Li poured out some divine energy, but the furnace did not respond. He calmed down and observed how the others were going to turn on the furnace. Soon, he found the problem. He pretended to turn on the switch. Finally, the furnace was turned on. Many disciples of the Chamber of Relics sneered. To them, Lady Dan was a goddess. Lu Li had offended their goddess. Naturally, they would not like him. They were gloating that Lu Li did not even know how to turn on the furnace. A man who did not know how to forge artifacts, even if he could make prototypes, would be of the lowest quality. Go and find out more about this man. A handsome young man with dashing eyebrows winked at a disciple. A glint of coldness rose in his eyes. If Lu Li had no background, he could find a chance to avenge Lady Dan after he failed the test and was expelled. Chapter 1277 *T In a hurry, Lu Li threw in some crystals. However, the fire was so strong that his clothes were almost burnt. He was covered in soot. He had been secretly learning for half a day. Some people had made a basic prototype and were starting to refine it. However, he had not mastered the proper control of the stove yet. If he could not control the stove well, the fire could die out at any time, let alone making a prototype. If he could not control the stove well, the fire could go out at any time, let alone making a prototype. More and more people had made prototypes and started to refine them. Luli was getting impatient. It had been more than half a day. He had figured out the steps, but theory was different from practice. It was troublesome. One mistake and the whole process would be ruined. Let's have a try. Luli scratched his head. He followed the steps of a warrior next to him and began to forge artifacts. First, he stabilized the stove and then followed the steps of the warrior next to him, throwing in materials and other strange materials. No, I made a mistake. Luli threw in a small black crystal. He suddenly remembered that the crystal should be thrown into the fire. He was filled with regret. Bang! The cauldron suddenly let out a muffled explosion. Then, the lid of the cauldron flew up into the sky, and the boiling hot molten iron inside splashed out. The people nearby were so frightened that they quickly dodged to the side. Patriarch Tion and the others were speechless. The stove exploded? It seemed that Luli knew nothing about forging artifacts. Not even the most basic prototype could be made at this level. Ha ha! The handsome young man behind Patriarch Tion sneered. He had already sentenced Luli to death. How could he get into the Chamber of Relics when he was so weak? In his dreams. Again. Luli did not give up. While observing others, he tried again and again. He did not believe that he could not make a basic prototype in 3 days. Luli turned on the stove again. Bit by bit, he was careful. But after 1 day, he had tried 5 times and failed all 5 times. There was a huge gap between theory and practice. He knew all the steps. However, the fire, the order of materials, the timing, and the amount of divine energy all had to be coordinated. It seems simple, but it was very easy to make mistakes without putting it into practice. Once a mistake was made, it would be almost impossible to successfully refine a tool embryo. After a day and a half, many people had already refined a perfect tool embryo and started to inscribe array formations and restrictions on it. Although there was no requirement to refine a divine artifact, being able to inscribe an array formation restriction on it would definitely add points. The higher the level and the more powerful the restriction array, the higher the chance of standing out. Luli took a look. Half of them had made perfect prototypes and were carving inhibition formations and inhibition formations. The expressions on the remaining people's faces were already unsightly. By the time they refined a perfect artifact embryo, the other party would have already inscribed high-level arrays and restrictions on it. When that time came, they would definitely have no hope of winning. Luli and the other two were making the slowest progress. Luli hadn't made anything while the other two had made prototypes, but the quality was poor. Now they had to start again. Sigh. I don't care. I'll just do whatever I want. Luli had given up all hope. He was ready to make some random thing. It seemed that he was out of the question. More than half of the people had made perfect prototype. Luli would be eliminated for sure. Even though it was a hopeless situation, it still took him a day to successfully refine a tool embryo. It had been 2.5 days and he had barely made a prototype, and it was a dark ball. The black ball was ugly. It was not smooth on the outside and it had spikes. It was rough. Compared to other people's prototypes, it was like the difference between a supreme relic and a quasi-relic. I don't have time to refine it. Luli saw that he had half a day left. If he wanted to refine it, it would take him more than half a day. What was more, it might go wrong and he wouldn't even be able to hand in the finished product. Phew. Luli put out the fire and sat on the ground. He held the black ball in his hand, lost in thought. He didn't care about the test anymore. What was on his mind now was what he should do after he failed the test. Patriarch Tion and the others shook their heads when they saw Luli holding the black ball in a daze. He was a promising young man. It was a pity that he had never learned how to forge artifacts systematically. The others paid no more attention to Luli. After all, the Chamber of Relics had its own rules. Luli's things were not presentable. Nobody dared to side with him, not even if he was talented in inhibition formations. Never mind. I will take it one step at a time. Astro Emperor once said that everyone's fate is predetermined. If the heavens want me to die, there is no point in me struggling. Luli shook his head after a while. All of a sudden, someone next to him shouted, "Sh*T, this freak. He has built such a powerful formation. He will pass the test." Luli looked over and saw a man holding an embryo of a sword in his hand. The embryo of the sword was covered with dense lines. It seemed that the formation was about to be engraved. Inscribed formations? Luli frowned. If he could engrave a powerful formation on the black ball, he might get more points. Unfortunately, Luli had no idea how to engrave profound inhibition formations. He had read many books and had some understanding of inhibition formations, but he had never learned how to forge artifacts systematically. He had no idea how to engrave profound inhibition formations. Wait, Luli suddenly remembered something. He did not know how to engrave profound inhibition formations, but someone else did. Blood Fairy had a great talent in inhibition formations. If he could engrave a random formation and ask Blood Fairy to modify it for him, wouldn't he be able to engrave a profound inhibition formation? Blood Fairy. Luli said to Blood Fairy at once, "I have a problem. I am forging an artifact and I need to engrave inhibition formations in it. But I can only engrave the simplest inhibition formations. Can you modify them for me and make them more powerful?" Luli explained in detail. Blood Fairy understood, but she was not sure. "I don't know the details. I can only say that I will try my best." Blood Fairy's innate divine power allowed her to merge her tentacles into the inhibition formation to control the inhibition formation. If she could have complete control over the inhibition formations Luli engraved and make subtle changes, she might be able to succeed. Luli thought about it and decided to engrave a spirit-gathering formation of the lowest level. He had read about such formations in the books left behind by Tianlingzi. It was easy to engrave one. He pretended to be in a trance. His hand glowed with divine energy as he poured it into the embryo. Using the method he learned from Tianlingzi's books, he began to engrave inhibition formations. The spirit-gathering formation was simple. In less than an hour, Luli had done it. He took out the wicked bead and held it in his hand. Bloodvine reached out from the wicked bead and into the iron ball through his hand. After a while, Blood Fairy retracted her tentacles and said, "Master, this inhibition formation is too simple. It is pointless to change it. How about you engrave 5 more spirit-gathering formations and I will try to make some changes?" 5? Luli frowned. Even if he engraved 100 spirit-gathering formations of such a low level, the effect would not be compounded. But since Blood Fairy had said so, Luli did it quickly. In 4 hours, he had engraved 5 more spirit-gathering formations. The iron ball was now filled with lines and patterns. "Blood Fairy, it is up to you," Luli said to Blood Fairy. She reached out her tentacles to try. Luli used psychic power to check around. Nobody was paying attention to him. Everyone seemed to be certain that he had been eliminated. Okay. It would be best if no one was paying attention to him. Luli waited quietly, feeling extremely nervous. An hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. Chapter 1278. Time's up. When the time was up, Patriarch Tian shouted. Everyone stood up. Patriarch Tian waved his hand and said, "Line up and hand in your prototypes. We have 10 patriarchs here and they will judge fairly." The first few people walked toward the 10 patriarchs. More people started to line up. But those in the front were those who had perfect prototypes or those who thought the inhibition formations were better. As for those who did not feel good about themselves, they were at the back. They were not confident enough. If they handed in their prototypes now, they would be judged as poor. Luli did not walk in the front. His black ball was of poor quality. Even though the inhibition formations were put in, Blood Fairy did not say how well they were modified. Perhaps not even Blood Fairy herself could tell if the modification was good or bad. After all, Blood Fairy was not a human being and did not know much. Good. This sword is excellent. Patriarch Tian held a prototype sword. He was the one Luli saw. His prototype was perfect and the inhibition formations were good as well. Luli could tell by looking at the patterns. This saber is excellent as well. This piece of armor is average. This bow is interesting. Excellent. The judges were fast. After all, the 10 patriarchs had been working at the Chamber of Relics for a long time. They had spent their whole lives making artifacts. They could tell the quality of the inhibition formations and prototypes right away. This one is inferior. Well, he can be eliminated right away. Some unlucky ones were eliminated after one look from a patriarch, which meant that their products were not good enough for the patriarchs to think highly of them. Luli was nervous. Many prototypes had been evaluated as excellent. There were more than 20 of them. When the number of prototypes reached 50, those at the back would not stand a chance. The patriarchs were fair in evaluating prototype. Every prototype would be evaluated by 3 people. In this way, no one would be eliminated because of a patriarch's mistake or personal preference. More and more people stepped forward. Luli was at the back of the line. Many disciples of the Chamber of Relics looked at him with contempt. Luli held a black iron ball in his hand. There were spikes and bumps on it, and it looked really ugly. More and more people were evaluated as excellent and some were eliminated. Luli and the others still had more than 20 people. More than 40 prototypes had been evaluated as excellent, more than half of them. Most of the others were frustrated. They were not confident in their product. They would all be eliminated. As expected, there were also 2 or 3 people who were lucky enough to be evaluated as excellent, and some people were evaluated as average. Under normal circumstances, there was still some hope for those in the middle class, but those in the lower class would basically be eliminated. It was finally Luli's turn. Luli walked over to Patriarch Tian after some thought. He had a good impression of this patriarch. He had just scolded Lady Dan. He must be a man with strong principles. Hello, Elder Tian, this is the tool embryo that I refined. Luli bowed with respect and then picked up the iron ball with both hands. Patriarch Tian frowned, but he took over the iron ball. Little brother, it seems like you haven't learned how to forge weapons? Patriarch Tian took a casual look and then looked up at Luli, who nodded and said, Yes, I have always been interested in forging artifacts. It is a pity that I don't have a good teacher, so I have never learned it. Luli admitted it openly. Patriarch Tian nodded. Then, he used divine energy to sense the formation inside. Patriarch Tian could tell that Luli had done it. What? A moment later, Patriarch Tian was taken aback. His eyes glowed as he murmured, How, what? The other patriarchs were alarmed by Patriarch Tian's strange behavior. One of them asked, Brother Tian, what is it? What is it that makes you so surprised? Old son, take a look at the engraved arrays inside. Elder Tian paused for a moment and passed the metal ball to Elder Sunday. Elder Sun received it doubtfully and used his divine power to sense it. Soon, his face was filled with surprise and confusion. After a while, he shook his head and said, I don't understand. I don't understand. Old Lu, why don't you take a look? The metal ball was passed to the next elder, and the result was the same. The next elder had a confused look on his face as he passed the metal ball to another elder. What? Luli was confused as well. Could it be that Blood Fairy had altered the 6 spirit-gathering formations and caused a huge change in them? Not even the patriarchs of Chamber of Relics could understand it? Was this a good thing or a bad thing? After the 10 elders finished looking at it, they returned the metal ball to Elder Tian. The 10 of them gathered together and activated a soundproof barrier. One of the elders said thoughtfully, Old Tian, This method of setting up the formation doesn't seem to be the orthodox method. Is it more like the turbulent streams of flows from the primordial era? Yes, I have the same feeling. Another patriarch added, this method is strange. There are no rules to it. It seems to be random, but it turns out to be marvelous. 6 Spirit Gathering Formations. Elder Tion concluded. They were originally the lowest grade of spirit gathering formations, but with some changes to the formation lines and patterns, the 6 spirit gathering formations actually fuse together? The power has been increased by 30 times. It seems to be messy, but it is ingeniously resonating. Apart from the turbulent streams, there is no other explanation. Buzzing. Patriarch Tion deactivated the soundproof shield. Looking at Luli, he asked, where did you learn this method? Where did you learn it? Luli touched his nose in embarrassment. He could not say that Blood Fairy changed it for him. He could not say that he read Tion Lingzi's book collection. Otherwise, the Chamber of Relics would kill him and take the wicked bead away. After all, those patriarchs would be interested in those books. He could only vaguely explain, I once saved a crazy old man. While he was recuperating, he taught me some formations and formation technique. Crazy old man? Patriarch Tion and the others looked at each other in confusion. One patriarch asked, what is his name? Where is he now? Luli shook his head in confusion. He left a long time ago. He said his name is the Crippled Zen Master and he is crazy. The Crippled Zen Master? Everyone was even more confused because no one had ever heard of this person's name. Luli found it funny. He knew the Crippled Zen Master from the mortal world. How could they know him? Patriarch Tion turned on the soundproof shield again. Guys, what should we do with this guy? His artifact embryo is not up to standard at all. However, the formations and restrictions carved on it are very interesting. Furthermore, this person is so young. He might have great achievements in the field of artifact forging. I personally agree to let him join the Divine Artifact Pavilion. Ha ha. Another patriarch sneered. Brother Tion, this guy has only scratched the surface. Also, if we take him in, I am afraid that Dan will come after him later. By then, the entire Valley of Relics will be in chaos. I think, let's just forget about it. Right. Chapter 1279. But another patriarch soon added, that Dan girl just likes to fool around. She is not a bad person. It is not a big deal. We can talk to her and she will be fine. I think this kid is good. He was the fastest at the first test and he is so young. It means that he is talented in this aspect. He has never learned to forge artifacts and yet, he can make one in such a short time. That in itself is a problem. What's more, he may be learning chaotic formations. If he can find something good in this aspect, it will be good for the Chamber of Relics. Such things can be passed down and will be treasures. Yes. Another patriarch said, the Chamber of Relics is a place of rules. Since this young man has passed all 3 tests, why don't we take him in? Are we going to let the Chamber of Relics down? Who will join the Chamber of Relics in the future? The prototype artifact in the 3rd test is not good, but the formations are brilliant. Who can say no if we give him an excellent one? The other patriarchs looked at each other. Patriarch, he was the most inflexible of them all. He would argue with anyone who dared to raise doubts for a day and a night. If no one has any objections, then let him pass. Patriarch Tion made up his mind. I will speak to the chief in person about Lady Dan. She is a genius, but she is ill-tempered. She will get into trouble if we continue to indulge her. We cannot turn away a promising young man because of Dan girl. This is against the rules of the Chamber of Relics. Since Patriarch Tion had said so, the others would not say anything else. Patriarch Tion deactivated the shield and looked at Luli gently. What is his name? He passed? Luli was overjoyed. None of the patriarchs asked for the names of the participants. He was the first. Luli answered at once, Patriarch Tian, my name is Luli. For the first time, Luli gave his real name. The Chamber of Relics was so prestigious that Yen Tiangang, god of wings, god of barbarian, and god of sorcerer could not afford to offend the Chamber of Relics. As for the Cabinet of Cloud, if they found out that he was Luli, he could not use an alias. It would be awkward to use an alias. Therefore, Luli decided to use his real name. Good Luli. Patriarch Tian smiled gently. You are accepted. From today on, you are a registered disciple of the Chamber of Relics. What? Even though Luli was mentally prepared, he was still overjoyed. From this, it could be seen that some elders of the Chamber of Relics were decent. They didn't hate him because of Lady Dan, which meant they had principles and a bottom line. At the very least, Luli didn't have to worry about being assassinated in the Chamber of Relics. Even if Miss Dan deliberately made things difficult for him, it was better to be wronged than to be hunted by the High Cloud School. What? The 100 or so people were in an uproar. The prototype that Luli had made was so ugly and of such a low level. It looked like a complete waste, but he was the first to be accepted. Naturally, many people expressed their dissatisfaction and began to mutter. Silence. Elder Tian snorted coldly. Then, he held the iron ball and infused his divine power into it. Very quickly, the iron ball lit up and the surrounding spiritual energy of the world began to fluctuate, rushing towards the iron ball in a frenzy. Many people's expressions changed slightly. The spirit-gathering ability of this iron ball was so abnormal that it was impossible for them to refine it. Many people's expressions changed when they saw Luli. He was so young and he had already achieved so much in the field of inhibition formations. His future was limitless. Thank you, Patriarch Tian. Thank you, Patriarchs. Luli cupped his fists and bowed, neither humble nor overbearing. Then, he stood on the side. Many disciples of the Chamber of Artifacts looked at Luli with hostility again, especially the young man with dashing eyebrows and bright eyes. They had thought that Luli would not be chosen. They did not expect that Luli would become a fellow disciple of the same sect. The young man snorted. Gradually, he calmed down. So what if Luli had joined the Chamber of Relics? If he offended Lady Dan, Luli would suffer. By then, he would not be able to take it and would have to leave in disgrace. When everyone was done, the patriarchs began to discuss. In the end, they relaxed the requirement. All the prototypes that were rated as excellent could pass the test directly. Another one that was rated as average was selected as well. It was said that this person's inhibition formations had merit. The rest were all banished from the Valley of Relic. Out of the tens of thousands of people, only 56 were accepted. The rest were delighted. The Chamber of Relics was not one of the 72 sections. However, it had a special status in Southern Divinity. Even the 72 sects and some hidden forces did not dare to offend the Chamber of Relic. When disciples of the Chamber of Relics went out, they would receive the best treatment. Disciples of other forces would have to treat them with respect. That was because the Chamber of Relics was not only backed by the Craftsman's sect but also the largest relic maker in the divinity. To get the best relic, one had to go to the Craftsman's sect. However, the Craftsman's sect would usually charge a high price. Not even the mighty warriors in the divinity could afford the price. Not everyone could afford the Craftsman's sect. Therefore, they had to go to the Chamber of Relics. Everyone had their own habits and favorite relic. Many powerful warriors or disciples of famous sects liked to have their favorite relic customized. To have a customized relic, one had to go to the Chamber of Relics. If one offended the Chamber of Relics and wanted to buy a large number of relic, there would be nowhere to buy them in Southern Divinity. One would have to pay a high price elsewhere. Relic included relic weapons, relic armors, soul-protecting relics, and other relics with special abilities. Those could be bought at the Chamber of Relics and could be customized. Another thing was that the Chamber of Relics had more than just relic. There were also many experts who knew about array formations and restriction spells. Your sect needed to set up all kinds of powerful array formations, right? Those array formations needed maintenance, right? Those array formations needed to be repaired, right? If they couldn't solve those problems, they would need the help of the Chamber of Relics. Therefore, the Chamber of Relics had a high status in the Southern Divinity. The disciples of the Chamber of Relics naturally had a high status too. Another thing was that the Chamber of Relics was too rich. They made so many relic every year, which brought them a huge amount of divine source. Therefore, the disciples of the Chamber of Relics were very rich. Their cultivation conditions were better than those of the 72 holy sects. There was another good thing about the Chamber of Relics. The disciples could leave the sect after they finished learning. As long as they didn't spread what they learned, the Chamber of Relics wouldn't pursue the matter. Once they did, they would be dead for sure. Even if the Chamber of Relics used a huge amount of divine source to kill you, the 72 holy sects wouldn't be able to protect you. Therefore, when someone became an immortal craftsman or a master craftsman, they would choose to leave their sect and join a force or a sect. They could become a patriarch or a guardian deity of that force or sect. They could do whatever they wanted in that force or sect and live a carefree life. All right, Long Yunhai, help the registered disciples settle down. Patriarch Tian glanced at Lu Li and the others. He waved his hand to the young man with dashing eyebrows and said, "Then, send them to their respective departments. Follow the rules. Do you understand?" "Yes, Patriarch Tian." Long Yunhai cupped his fist. Lu Li looked at Long Yunhai. Lu Li's heart skipped a beat when he remembered the cold look in Long Yunhai's eyes. Patriarch Tian had asked this young man to make arrangements. Lu Li was afraid that he wouldn't have a good life in the future. Would Long Yunhai send him to clean the latrines for a few years? Chapter 1280. The Patriarchs left. The handsome young man, Long Yunhai, waved his hand and said, "Come with me, everyone." Long Yunhai and a dozen disciples led Lu Li and the others to a palace. After entering the palace, Long Yunhai took out a booklet and gave it to the disciples. He glanced at Lu Li and the others and said, "These are the rules of the sect. You must remember them well. If you break the first 10 rules, you will be killed on the spot. No one can save you. If you break the last 10 rules, you will be expelled from the Chamber of Relics. If you break the last 30 rules, you will be punished by the Hall of Penal Law." Lu Li opened the booklet and read it. The first rule was that no one should betray their masters or ancestors. Otherwise they would be killed. This was not surprising at all. Any sect or force would have committed a serious crime if they had committed such a crime. They taught you something, but you betrayed your masters and ancestors. Such people should be killed. The second rule was that no one should kill their own disciples. It was normal. If they killed each other, it would affect the unity of the sect and shake the foundation of the sect. The third rule was that no one should teach the skills of the sect to outsiders. The fourth rule was that no one should do anything that would damage the reputation of the sect. The fifth rule, 10 of them were all very serious matters. The Divine Artifact Pavilion seemed to have strong principles and was a very righteous sect. This could be seen from their sect rules. Lu Li glanced at all the rules and memorized them. Now that he had joined the Chamber of Relics, and he had offended Lady Dan and Long Yunhai, he should behave himself. If he broke the rules, they could take advantage of it and make trouble for him. Okay. You should get familiar with the rules. I will go and find out about the shortage of people in each hall. Long Yunhai waved his hand and asked the dozen disciples to stay here. Then he left alone. As soon as he walked out of the hall, he turned into a small hall. Miss Dan and a group of young ladies were sitting there. "Brother Hai." Many young ladies greeted Long Yunhai when they saw him. Miss Dan took a look at Long Yunhai but didn't say anything. She just pouted her lips angrily. Sister Dan. Long Yunhai nodded to them elegantly. Then he looked at Miss Dan with a smile and said, "Don't be angry. That guy has joined the sect, but I will help you. I am in charge of the distribution of disciples. What do you think if I send him to guard the graveyard of our sect? You want him to guard the Millennium Cemetery?" Wow! The young ladies became excited and chattered nonstop. Some of them suggested that Sixley should cook in the kitchen for 100 years, some suggested that Sixley should take care of horses, and some even suggested that Sixley should scan the toilet for 1,000 years. The group of young ladies were the daughters and granddaughters of the elders. They were all devils in human form. Naturally, they wanted to vent their anger when they were bullied. Their hearts were not particularly bad, but they were just a group of spoiled children. Lady Dan looked a bit better. She rolled her phoenix eyes and suddenly her eyes lit up. She said, "None of your ideas are good. I think we should send him to old Freak Goo. He will be tortured to death. Ancient monster." The people in the small hall immediately fell silent. This name seemed to have some kind of magical power, causing all the young ladies to turn pale and feel a chill run down their spines. One of them said, "Elder Goo? Wasn't it a little too harsh to send him over? With Elder Goo's temper, the disciple he sent last time really went crazy." "Humph!" Lady Dan snorted angrily. "Who told her to offend me? I've never been scolded in public since I was a kid. This bastard made me lose face. If I can't vent my anger, I won't be able to refine weapons in the future." "Good." Long Yunhai nodded heavily and said, "As long as you're happy, I will send him to Elder Goo. Isn't he proud of his powerful inhibition formations? Elder Goo is one of the top elders in our faction. Sending him to Elder Goo will let him learn some good stuff. Lady Dan, you guys talk. I'll make the arrangements now." "Hee, Brother Hai is the best." Lady Dan smiled sweetly. Long Yunhai was dazed for a while. The other young ladies all looked gloomy when they saw Long Yunhai's expression. In their eyes, Long Yunhai was the best lover, but he was obsessed with Lady Dan. However, Lady Dan was a rare genius in refining weapons. She was beautiful and had a high social status. It was normal that Long Yunhai liked her. Long Yunhai walked out and walked around. He got the information of the missing members in each hall. Then he walked back to the main hall. The disciples here had compiled the list of all the registered disciples and recorded the information of Lu Li and the others. "All right." Long Yunhai glanced at them and began to read the list. Lu Iha, Fong Yang, Li Tianyi. Qi Guanyue, the 10 of you go to the Hall of Celestial Artifacts. Long Yunha, take them there. The Hall of Celestial Artifacts? The 10 of them were delighted. The Hall of Celestial Artifacts was a very important hall in the Chamber of Relic. Most of the relics there were made by the Hall of Celestial Artifact. The resources there were abundant. Even though they could only do odd jobs there, they could learn a lot. After a few years, they could become official disciples and take part in refining weapons. Hu Bisui Jifeng Yuming Huang Hu. Lu Shi, the 20 of you go to the Hall of Celestial Artifact. Long Yunshan, take them there. Long Yunhai named another 20 people. The 10 of them looked a bit gloomy. The Hall of Celestial Artifacts was a big hall, but it was not as important as the Hall of Celestial Artifacts. The Hall of Celestial Artifacts was in charge of the materials of the divine materials and the tripods. The 10 of them could only do odd jobs there, however. They were all right in disciples. When they first entered the divine artifact pavilion, they would be doing the dirtiest and most tiring jobs. It would take at least a few years for them to succeed. The 10 of them understood the situation, but they could not help but feel disappointed. Zhao Daiming, Chao Tsuqing, Tang Tao, Wang Huatian, people kept being sent to the various halls. Some of them seemed to have connections inside, and were assigned to serve certain elders. Some were even sent to the battle hall. The battle hall in the Divine Artifact Pavilion had almost no chance to fight. No one dared to offend the Divine Artifact Pavilion. Hence, the battle hall was not very good. More and more people left. Only 7 of them were left. The 10 of them started to feel nervous. They had already sent people to the big halls, so where would the rest of them be arranged to go? No one could be sure. Sigh, Luli sighed slightly. Long Yunhai did not look at him. It seemed fair and just, but Luli knew that Long Yunhai already had a plan. Luli could only wait to suffer. Luli! A moment later, Long Yunhai shouted a name. Luli looked up and met Long Yunhai's eyes. He knew that this would happen sooner or later. Long Yunhai paused and scanned the few people around Luli. Then, he pointed at one of them and said, "Qian Huanhan, you and Luli will go to Elder Gu's place. Listen to Elder Gu's orders and arrangements." Elder Gu? Luli was slightly shocked. Long Yunhai did not send him to clean the toilet or guard the cemetery. Instead, he sent him to an elder's place? Why was Long Yunhai treating him so well? This did not make sense. Elder Gu? The few disciples around Long Yunhai's face changed. 3 of the 7 people around Lu Li's face also changed. They looked at Lu Li and Qian Huanhan with pity. Qian Huanhan looked a little silly. He scratched his head in confusion. Lu Li's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that this Elder Gu was not easy to serve. Not only would he not be able to learn anything from Elder Gu, but he would also have a miserable life. End of chapter. Chapter 1281. Long Yunhai sent a disciple named Long Wentian to take Lu Li and Qian Huanhan to Patriarch Gu. Along the way, this disciple explained many of Patriarch Gu's rules, which gave Lu Li a headache. Even though Long Wentian did not say much about Patriarch Gu, Lu Li could tell from his brief words that this Patriarch Gu had a strange temperament. He was eccentric and difficult to get along with. For example, when they were at Patriarch Gu's place, they must pay special attention to cleanliness. If Patriarch Gu's hall was dirty or messy, they would be punished severely. Another thing was that when they were at Patriarch Gu's place, they must not make any noise or leave for no reason. They must ask for Patriarch Gu's permission, or else they would be punished as well. Qian Huanhan was young and good-looking. He was the kind of person that people would like at first sight. He was not particularly handsome, but he was pleasing to the eyes. It was a pity that he was a bit dull and sometimes silly. He followed Lu Li and looked around with curiosity. Along the way, he said nothing. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes. He had no idea where he and Lu Li were going or what was waiting for them. Lu Li was speechless. Did this man have a one-track mind? After making a few turns, Long Wentian arrived at a corner of the valley. There was a huge manor here, with a castle and 2 small pavilions. It looked quite grand. I, Long Wentian, would like to see Patriarch Gu. Long Wentian stood outside the door, then bowed respectfully and said in a deep voice. There was no response from inside the manor. Long Wentian stood there quietly. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan did not dare to say a word. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, Long Wentian heard a hoarse voice from inside. "What is it?" Long Wentian put on a solemn face. He bowed again and said, "This time we have recruited some registered disciples. We have picked 2 of our best and sent them to you. They will be at your disposal." With that said, the manor quieted down again. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, Patriarch Gu said, "Leave them here. You can go now." "Okay." Long Wentian bowed and said, "Elder Gu is busy, disciple will take his leave." Long Wentian looked at Lu Li and Qian Huanhan and walked away. Lu Li could tell from Long Wentian's eyes that he was gloating. Qian Huanhan could tell as well. He scratched his head in confusion. After Qian Huanhan left, Qian Huanhan scratched his head and whispered to Lu Li, "Lu Li, shall we go and pay our respects to Patriarch Gu?" Before Patriarch Gu says anything, don't move. Wait. Lu Li threw him a glance and said in a low voice. Qian Huanhan scratched his head again but did not move. He stood outside with Lu Li in silence. As it turned out, they stood there for 3 days and nights. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan were like two idiots. They stood outside the manor for 3 days and nights. On several occasions, Qian Huanhan tried to open the door and go in, but Lu Li stopped him with a look. Qian Huanhan's temper was not bad. He just stood there with Lu Li. Come in. On the 4th day, a hoarse voice finally came from the manor. Lu Li was relieved. They must have passed the first test. Lu Li bowed and Qian Huanhan followed suit. Lu Li pushed the door open and walked into the manor with Qian Huanhan. Finally, they arrived at the castle. Outside the castle, Lu Li did not go in rashly. Instead, he bowed again and said, I am Lu Li, a registered disciple. Greetings, Patriarch. Qian Huanhan came back to his senses and bowed as well. I am Qian Huanhan, a registered disciple. Greetings, Patriarch. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, Lu Li finally said, Come in. Lu Li tidied up his clothes and Qian Huanhan followed suit. They walked out of the castle but there was no one in the hall. Lu Li did not use psychic power. He took a look and saw that there were 3 corridors in the hall, leading to the left, right and back. After a pause, Lu Li walked to the corridor in the back. Qian Huanhan did not seem to have his own thoughts. He just followed Lu Li. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan arrived at the backyard. What they saw was an old man in a black robe sitting under the grape trellis in the backyard. He was examining a strange artifact embryo with a frown. On the stone table next to him were some ancient books. Qian Huanhan looked to the other side of the backyard. He saw 2 graves, one older and the other newer. Swish! Patriarch Gu suddenly moved his hand. A hand appeared in the air and landed on Qian Huanhan's face. Qian Huanhan did not have time to react. He was smashed away and fell to the ground. There was a blood mark on his face. Don't look at what you are not supposed to see, Patriarch Gu said coldly without looking up. Qian Huanhan was angry but he said nothing. He stood up and calmed himself down. He stood behind Lu Li. Lu Li bowed and said, Greetings, Patriarch Gu. Qian Huanhan must have been very dissatisfied, but he did not show it. He bowed slightly and said, Disciple Qian Huanhan greets Elder Gu. I have made a mistake. Please punish me. I've already punished him. Elder Gu didn't raise his head and coldly said, As long as you don't violate my rules, you can do whatever you want here. If you do, I will naturally punish you. If you are not convinced, you can apply for a transfer from the Hall of Elders. I will not force you to stay. Transfer? Lu Li forced a smile. If he dared to ask the Hall of Patriarchs for a transfer, he would be tired of living. He would be banished from the sect directly or sent to guard a cemetery for hundreds or thousands of years. Lu Li believed that he could live a comfortable life here as long as he was careful and had a good grasp of Patriarch Gu's temperament. He slowly explored the Tao of artifact refinement while cultivating in secret, slowly plotting. Therefore, he paused for a moment and said respectfully, Elder Gu is right. It is our honor to follow Elder Gu. Naturally, we must abide by Elder Gu's rules. You will live in the attic on the east side. Patriarch Gu seemed to be losing his patience. He waved his hand coldly and said, Without my permission, you cannot go anywhere other than in the attic. I will call you if I need you. You can be at my beck and call. Yes. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan bowed and were about to leave when Patriarch Gu remembered something. Go to the left side of the Hall of Materials to sort out the materials. In 3 days, familiarize yourself with all the materials. In 3 days, I need to forge artifact. If you cannot get the materials I need in time, you will have to cut off your hands 10 times. Swish, swish, swish. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan were taken aback. They had to learn all the materials in 3 days? Who knew how many materials were in that side hall? What was more, they did not have any books about this. Once they made a mistake, they had to cut off their hands 10 times? That was equivalent to suffering the pain of having their hands cut off 10 times. This Patriarch Gu was too freakish. Yes. Lu Li made up his mind and left. So did Qian Huanhan. They left the backyard and walked to the left side hall. When they pushed the door open, they were teleported into a strange, small space. They were dumbfounded by what they saw. This wasn't a side hall filled with divine materials, and it was a strange, small world instead. It covered an area of an entire few tens of kilometers, and it was filled with strange divine materials. With a single glance, it was impossible to tell how many divine materials there were. So, how could they finish identifying them in 3 days? Chapter 1282. Is Old Man Gu trying to kill us? Qian Huanhan murmured. Lu Li glared at Qian Huanhan coldly. But it was too late. From the sky, a hand suddenly smashed down and smashed Qian Huanhan to the ground. Bang! Qian Huanhan was wearing a relic armor, but he was covered in blood. He seemed to be in a miserable state. After the hand landed, Qian Huanhan said nothing. Lu Li wanted to remind Qian Huanhan that this small world was an interspatial artifact built by Patriarch Gu. Patriarch Gu could sense everything that happened here. Talking about Patriarch Gu here was no different from talking about him to his face. Qian Huanhan was asking for trouble. Brother Qian Huanhan, are you okay? Lu Li walked over and took out 2 healing pellets. Qian Huanhan shook his head and took out 2 healing pellets himself. Then, he sat down to tend to his wounds. Buzzing! Lu Li took out some clean water and some tools to clean the ground. All the blood stains were cleaned up. After that, he started to wander around the small world, and he swept his gaze over the piles of god materials. Wow, the patriarchs of the Chamber of Relics are so rich! Lu Li exclaimed to himself. The materials here were not as valuable as Tianlingzi's. But the number of materials here was 10 times more than those in the branch hall of the Wicked Bead. What? Lu Li's eyes glowed. He saw blood crystals in a corner and there were 14 of them. Palace of Black Mountain sold blood crystals at 100,000 divine sources. Lu Li believed that the price was too high, but he would sell them at tens of thousands. There were more than a dozen blood crystals here. That would be hundreds of thousands of divine sources. Such a shame that I cannot take them, Lu Li said to himself. With the 14 blood crystals, the warlord skeleton could activate for 14 times, which was enough to kill many immortals. Lu Li did not dare to touch any of the materials here. Patriarch Gu could sense their every move. Even if Lu Li were to take a piece of the lowest level of crystals, he would be punished by Patriarch Gu. 2 graves, an old one and a new one? They must be Patriarch Gu's wife and children. Lu Li remembered the 2 graves in the backyard. Patriarch Gu's strange and violent temper must have something to do with the death of his wife and children. He had to be more careful in the future, or he would suffer in vain. He continued to wander around and soon, his eyes lit up again. He found a thick ancient book, which should be an introduction to divine materials. As expected, he flipped through the ancient book. The first few large words on the first page were brief record of divine materials. They only had 3 days. Lu Li started reading at once. While he was reading, he used psychic power to check around. After a while, he said to Qian Huanhan, Brother Qian Huanhan, if your wounds are not serious, you should get up and get to work. Otherwise, we will all be in big trouble. Qian Huanhan opened his eyes and the corner of his mouth twitched. I'm not dead yet. Brotherly, tell me what you need. I'll listen to you. It had not been long since Qian Huanhan came in, but he was slapped twice while Lu Li was fine. Qian Huanhan admired Lu Li. What was more, Lu Li seemed to be a calm person. Even after offending Lady Dan, he could join the Chamber of Relic. Lu Li did not know how to forge artifacts, but he could engrave profound formations. He seemed to be in a good mood. After being slapped twice, he quickly calmed down and walked over. Lu Li looked up at him and asked, "Do you have a pen and paper?" "Yes." Qian Huanhan took out a pen and paper. Lu Li took him to a pile of red crystals and said, "These are fire obsidian. They are used to heat stoves. Write them down. Also, there are fire obsidian nearby. Put them all together and we will split up." "That's great. Brother Li, you are awesome. I am convinced." Qian Huanhan praised Lu Li. They did not have to memorize all the materials. All they needed to do was to identify them, sort them out, and write down their names. In this way, they would not make any mistakes after 3 days. "Okay. Let's not talk about this." Lu Li waved his hand. "Since we have been assigned to Patriarch Gu, we must work hard. If Patriarch Gu is happy, he will teach us how to forge artifacts." Qian Huanhan nodded. "Yes, I am here to learn how to forge artifacts. I will become a master craftsman, I will." Lu Li took out all the fire obsidian and piled them up. Qian Huanhan wrote down fire obsidian and put them in the pile. "These are white phosphorus stones. They are also used to heat stoves," Lu Li said, pointing to another type of white crystal. This time, Qian Huanhan began to look for white phosphorus stones without Lu Li's orders. Lu Li got busy as well. Both of them were divine spirits, so they were quite fast and efficient in doing things. Just like that, Lu Li sorted out the materials. He found them and piled them together. Then, he labeled them and indicated their uses. "This is venomous flood dragon's claw. It is poisonous. Do not touch it. This is one of the materials for making bows." Qian Huanhan took out a pair of black gloves and said, "I have relic gloves. Brother Li, let me get them. Just mark them." The two of them moved quickly inside, and after identifying the various divine materials, they gathered them together. They were neatly stacked in an orderly manner. They were efficient. In just 1 day they had sorted out more than half of the materials. At this rate they could finish in 3 days. There were too many materials in the small world, at least tens of thousands. It was impossible for Lu Li and Qian Huanhan to remember them all. That being said, if Patriarch Gu needed something, they could look for it according to the labeled card. They would not make a mistake. You are smart." For the first time, Patriarch Gu, who was sitting under the grape trellis, looked up. He snorted and went back to studying the strange prototype in his hand. 3 days later, Lu Li and Qian Huanhan had sorted out all the materials. They had checked them twice. After making sure that the labels were correct, they did not go to the attic that Patriarch Gu told them to stay in. Instead, they sat there and waited. "Get me 100 fire obsidian, 100 white phosphorus stones, and 100 black rock stones." A hoarse voice suddenly came. Lu Li opened his eyes at once and dashed to the pile of materials. He took out 100 fire obsidian, white phosphorus stones, and black rock stones and handed them to Qian Huanhan. "Send them over. Come to me if you need anything." "Okay." Somehow, Qian Huanhan trusted Lu Li. He took over the 3 types of stones, put them into his interspatial ring and dashed out of the portal. A moment later, Qian Huanhan came back with another 5 palm marks on his face. Lu Li raised his eyebrows and asked, "What is it?" Qian Huanhan said, feeling wronged, "Patriarch Gu was working on artifacts. I took a few glances." Lu Li was speechless. This Qian Huanhan had just been slapped in the backyard. How could he not remember? He should not look at things that he was not supposed to see. Cut the crap. What does Patriarch Gu need? Lu Li did not waste time. He asked at once. Qian Huanhan answered at once, 1 dragon's vine, 10 pieces of steel of Heaven Mountain. Lu Li took out the materials and said, "How about I send them over and you stay here?" "No, let me do it." Qian Huanhan put away the materials and left in a hurry. When he came back, there was another 5 palm marks on the other side of his face, and his mouth was swollen. What is it now? Lu Li rolled his eyes. Qian Huanhan was about to cry. When I left, I heard an explosion from the stove. I looked back and I was slapped again. All right, don't be upset. What do you want? Lu Li could not sympathize with Qian Huanhan anymore. He handed the materials to Qian Huanhan and the latter left in a hurry. Chapter 1283. This time, Qian Huanhan was slapped twice because he made a mistake. Patriarch Gu told him to throw in 3 black diamond rocks, 5 fire obsidian, and 1 white phosphorus rock. However, he made a mistake and missed 1 fire obsidian. Naturally, the result was miserable. Lu Li picked up the materials Patriarch Gu needed and left this side hall in a hurry. He went to another side hall where Patriarch Gu used to forge artifacts. Lu Li rushed into the side hall. After a white glare, he found himself in another strange space. This space was spacious, more like a valley. There were all kinds of stoves and tools. Patriarch Gu was standing next to the largest stove in the center. Whoosh! Lu Li did not dare to take a second look. He took a casual glance and hurried over to Patriarch Gu. He took out all the materials and bowed. He stood on the side in silence, not daring to look around. Whoosh whoosh! Patriarch Gu poured some Xian energy into the stove and said, "Throw in 9 fire obsidian, 1 black diamond rock, and 16 white phosphorus rocks." Lu Li took out fire obsidian, black diamond rock, and white phosphorus rocks accurately and then stood on the side in silence. He did not even look at the stove. He only stared at the ground like a stone puppet. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Patriarch Gu poured in divine energy and asked Lu Li to throw in materials from time to time. Lu Li did it with perfect accuracy. After the time for 3 incense sticks to burn, Patriarch Gu waved his hand and said, "Go and get a drop of fire phoenix blood and a piece of gold of yang." Lu Li did not reply. He cupped his fists and left quickly. When Lu Li left, Patriarch Gu threw him a glance and nodded emotionlessly. When Lu Li returned to the side hall with materials, Qian Huanhan saw that Lu Li was fine after a long time. Qian Huanhan felt wronged and said, "Brother Li, how did you do it? Can you teach me? I don't want to be beaten again. Wu, I am a grown-up now and my parents have never beaten me." Lu Li took out the materials quickly. When he was about to leave, he said, "Patriarch Gu will not trouble you for no reason. It takes him a lot of energy to teach people a lesson. He is a man of principle. We have to abide by our duties and follow his rules. Why would he hit us for no reason?" Lu Li went back to the side chamber where he used to forge artifacts. He had been following the rules. He was careful and focused. He knew that Elder Gu was eccentric, but he was definitely not an unreasonable person. As long as he did things carefully and did not make any mistakes, he would be able to gain Elder Gu's approval step by step. As an elder of the Artifact Pavilion and a high-level artificer, he must be very arrogant. As long as he fully approves of you, your future days will be easy. If he wasn't recognized, he would definitely dislike you more and more, and his days in the future would be difficult. Lu Li had been going back and forth between the Hall of Artifact Forging and the Hall of Materials. He had been busy for 6 to 8 hours, but not once was he scolded or punished by Patriarch Gu. Qian Huanhan was completely convinced by him. He also called him brotherly. For the last time, Lu Li took out some materials and Patriarch Gu had stopped working. The stove was opened. His hand glowed with golden divine energy. Holding a strange relic in his hand, Patriarch Gu shook his head and sighed. Another failure. Alas! Patriarch Gu threw the oval ball to Lu Li and said, "You can study this and throw it into the Hall of Materials. You can have 3 days off. You can wander around in the Valley of Relics and report to the Hall of Internal Affairs. Do not make any trouble. Thank you, Patriarch Gu. Luli bowed and left. He knew that Patriarch Gu had given him this strange relic. Luli had gained initial approval from Patriarch Gu. He went to the Hall of Materials and brought Qian Huanhan out. Luli took him to the attic on the east side. The attic was not spacious, but there were several rooms. The rooms were messy and dirty. Luli and Qian Huanhan cleaned them up. There were inhibition formations in the room. Qian Huanhan activated the inhibition formations and was about to complain to Luli. Luli stopped Qian Huanhan with a look and waved his hand. Qian Huanhan, rest well. I will study this relic and we will go out in a day. Qian Huanhan nodded with a bitter face. Luli went back to his room. He took out the oval relic and poured divine energy into it. As soon, he was shocked. The patterns and diagrams inside the relic were too complicated. Large formations were connected with smaller ones, and the larger ones were integrated. Luli felt he had seen hundreds of diagrams. He felt dizzy. What kind of relic is this? A supreme relic? Luli was deep in thought. He let Bloodvine reach out from his hand and said, Blood Fairy, take a good look at the diagrams inside. They may help you. Okay. Blood Fairy's tentacles reached in, and after a few hours, she pulled them back. She said, It's done, Master. I've memorized all the diagrams. Luli nodded. He cultivated for a while. A day later, he left his room and threw the abandoned relic back to the Hall of Materials. Let's go to the Hall of Internal Affairs. Luli dragged Qian Huanhan out from his room. Patriarch Gu told him to report to the Hall of Internal Affairs even though Luli did not know what he was going to do. But he could tell that they had passed Patriarch Gu's test and Patriarch Gu was willing to let them stay. They walked out of the yard and wandered around the Valley of Relic. After several turns and several miles, Luli made sure that nobody was around. He whispered to Qian Huanhan, Qian Huanhan, from now on, do not criticize Patriarch Gu when you are in the yard or you will suffer again. Do you understand? Qian Huanhan seemed to have thought it through. He nodded. Okay, I will remember. I will put up with all kinds of hardships to become a master craftsman. A divine craftsman? You? Right at that moment, several people came out from a nearby castle. The one in the lead was a girl in sexy clothes. She was followed by two male disciples. Luli had seen the girl before. She was one of the young ladies that followed Lady Dan the other day. She was wearing a pink dress that accentuated her breasts. Her neckline was low, revealing her fair skin. Her waist was slim and her hips were perky. Her curves were perfect. She walked over, swaying her hips and holding her head high. She was like a proud peacock. She sneered. There are only 20 master craftsmen in the entire divinity, and there is only one in the Chamber of Relics. That is our chief. Chief has spent 30,000 years to become a master craftsman. He is a talent that is hard to come by in 100,000 years. Do you think you are more talented than Chief? Why don't you look at yourself in the mirror? Luli touched his nose but said nothing. Qian Huanhan's expressions changed. Eventually, he did not talk back. He had just arrived at the Chamber of Relics. He did not know what was going on. It would not be good for him to get into a conflict. Right. The young lady in red suddenly threw Luli a glance. Disciples at the Chamber of Relics have a clear hierarchy. You are registered disciples, the lowest level. I, Jiang Lianxue, am a core disciple. According to the rules, you must kneel to me. Kneel. Luli and Qian Huanhan were taken aback. Luli sneered to himself. Did Jiang Lianxue think he was an idiot? If there was such a rule, why didn't they kneel to patriarchs? Are you going to kneel or not? Seeing that Luli and Qian Huanhan did not move, Jiang Lianxue pulled a long face. She took out a silver iron whip and said, If you don't blame me for teaching you a lesson. Chapter 1284. Qian Huanhan was enraged. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He was not willing to be humiliated and was ready to fight back. Lu Li knew that they could not move. They could not fight back even if Jiang Lianxue slapped them. Why? Because Jiang Lianshue's father or grandpa must be a patriarch with real power, or else she would not be so arrogant. That day Jiang Lianxue was with Lady Dan. Once they started a fight in the Valley of Relics, the Hall of Law in the Valley of Relics would be alerted. When they went to the Hall of Law, Qian Huanhan and Jiang Lianxue were registered disciples, while Jiang Lianxue was a core disciple and she was the daughter or granddaughter of a patriarch. They would have lost the case before it even started. Right or wrong, it was a grave mistake for them to fight. They would either be expelled from the sect or punished severely. Lu Li thought for a while. He stepped forward and stood in front of Qian Huanhan. Taking out a booklet, Lu Li held it up and said, "These are the rules of the sect. Sister Jiang, please tell me, which one says that we must kneel to core disciples? We did not even kneel to patriarchs. Do you think you are more honorable than the patriarchs? That your status in the sect is higher than the patriarchs? If so, I will ask Patriarch Gu when I go back." Jiang Lianxue and the two disciples were taken aback. Lu Li had flattered Jiang Lianxue so much that she was speechless. The most important thing was the last sentence. If this matter was really reported to Elder Gu, they might be called over by Elder Gu. The one that the disciples feared the most was not the Patriarch of the Hall of Law, but Patriarch Gu. This Patriarch Gu had a strange temper. He was not on good terms with the other patriarchs in the sect. If a disciple offended him, he would smack them away without mercy. The two disciples were frightened. Jiang Lianxue's expressions changed. In the end, she bit her teeth and said, "Very well. Lu Li, I will remember you. Later, Jiang Lianxue left with her disciples with a long face. Qian Huanhan was relieved. He patted Lu Li's shoulder and said, "Brother Li, you are the best. Otherwise we would have suffered today." "I am the one who got you into trouble." Lu Li forced a smile. "She is here to make trouble for me. I have offended Lady Dan. From now on, they will make trouble. Next time, don't hang out with me." "What are you talking about?" Qian Huanhan shook his head and said, "We were assigned to Elder Gu's place together. We are brothers in the sect. You are my brother. We should share blessings and misfortunes." Lu Li smiled and said nothing more. He waved his hand and the two of them moved on. After a series of twists and turns, they finally arrived at the Internal Affairs Division. The two reported the cause of the matter and were led into the Internal Affairs Division. A patriarch was dealing with some affairs at his desk. Lu Li came in, bowed and said, "Greetings, Patriarch." Behind the desk was an old man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He looked very dignified. He raised his head and asked, "What's the matter, Elder?" Lu Li bowed again and said, "We are registered disciples that have just joined the sect. We were assigned to Patriarch Gu to wait for his orders. Patriarch Gu asked us to come and report." The Patriarch answered. He looked at the disciple who brought Lu Li and Lu Yun in and said, "Lu Yun, take care of this." "Yes." The young disciple pointed to the side chamber and said to Lu Li and Lu Yun, "Come with me." Lu Li and Lu Yun followed Lu Yun into the side chamber. Lu Yun asked them to sit down. After a while, he came back with 2 jade talismans and said, "These are your ID talismans. From now on, you are official registered disciples. If you don't make any mistakes in half a year, you can become official disciples." "Oh right," Lu Yun added after some thoughts, "let me explain to you. Registered disciples do not receive any salary. Of course, if you can make contributions to the sect, you can get contribution points according to the rules. You can trade contribution points for many things in the sect, such as relics, divine sources, materials. When you have enough contribution points, you can even become a hall master or a patriarch directly." Contribution points? Lu Li frowned and asked, Brother Lu Yun, how do I get contribution points? There are 3 ways. Lu Yun had a good attitude. Maybe it was because he didn't know Lu Li's situation or he didn't care about Lady Dan. Lu Yun explained, first of all, battles. For example, if our sect is going to war with other sects, contribution points will be converted according to merit. Second, forging artifacts. If you can make relics and hand them over to the sect, you can get contribution points. Third, you can make contributions to the sect. For example, you can create a novel method of forging artifacts, you can come up with a new kind of formation, or you can make a name for the sect. Anyways, if you do something that is helpful to the sect, the patriarchs will discuss and give you contribution points. Okay, Lu Li nodded. He understood now. Lu Yun continued after a pause. Of course, if you make mistakes, your contribution points will be deducted as well. If you don't have contribution points and more than 100 contribution points are deducted at one time, you will be evicted from the sect directly. Right. Our sect has a strict hierarchy. For example, you are registered disciples. If you can make contributions now and get 10 contribution points, you can be promoted to official disciples immediately. Official disciples will get 10 contribution points as salary every year. If you have 1,000 contribution points, you will become an external disciple. At 10,000, you will become a core disciple. At 100,000, you will become a hall master or a commander. At 1,000,000, you will become a patriarch. If you can reach 10 million, you will become a principal patriarch. Right now, there are only 3 principal patriarchs in our sect. They are the most powerful under the chief. I see. Lu Li stood up and clasped his fists. Lu Yun had provided them with some knowledge. Without Lu Yun, Lu Li would not know who to ask. The sect does not recognize divine sources, only contribution points. Lu Yun continued, if you want to learn forging artifacts, apart from Patriarch Gu teaching you, you will have to figure it out on your own. If you have contribution points, you can borrow books from the library. You can go to the Hall of Tripod to trade for materials and tripods. Practice and explore on your own. In the sect, other than the elders, hall masters, deputy hall masters, and commanders, the disciples are not qualified to teach the way of weapon forging. Don't worry, under normal circumstances, the new disciples can only really come into contact with weapon forging after 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years. Lu Li frowned. It was hard to make a name for himself in the Chamber of Relic. Fortunately, he had Tian Lingzi's collection of books. Over the years, he could learn on his own. If Patriarch Gu did not teach him, he would forge artifacts on his own. It is difficult, but when I become a master craftsman, all my problems will be solved. Lu Li encouraged himself. When he became a master craftsman, he could go to the cabinet of Cloud and nobody would dare to kill him. By then, he would have countless divine sources and he could mobilize many people to look for Lu Ling. He could put up a reward for killing God of Wings and even hire someone to kill Yen Tiangang. He could take the teleportation formation in the space-time office to go back to the Earth Imperial Universe and pick up Jiang Qiling, by Qiushue and by Xiaoshuang. Lay low for 10 years and then soar up. Chapter 1285. Lu Yun was a nice guy. He told Lu Li and Qian Huanhan about Patriarch Gu secretly. Lu Yun said that Patriarch Gu was a skilled craftsman and was the most promising one to become a master craftsman. Unfortunately, his wife died in an accident, which hurt his mind. He was depressed for hundreds of years. When he finally recovered, Patriarch Gu's son went to a land of treasure and passed away. Patriarch Gu's family line was cut off. This time it was a bigger blow. Patriarch Gu had a strange temperament. After this, he became a complete freak. He barely talked to anyone in the sect. He stayed in his own yard. Apart from the chief, He was not on good terms with any other patriarchs. As for the disciples, he was even harsher. He would scold or even punish the disciples if they did not follow the rules. Even Lady Dan was scolded by him for an hour. The chief and patriarchs of the sect were understanding. No matter what he did, nobody would say anything. Instead, they would tell the disciples to be kind to him. After all, he was a poor guy. Lu Yun told Lu Li and Qian Huanhan to tolerate Patriarch Gu and not to anger him for no reason. Otherwise, even if Patriarch Gu was scared to death, the chief would just scold him and nothing would happen. Back in the days, Patriarch Gu had made great contributions to the sect. Now, he could make many supreme relics in a year. Lu Yun told Lu Li about the levels of craftsmen. For example, those that could make low-grade relics of the lowest level could be called craftsmen. If one could forge a high-grade divine artifact, one would be a divine blacksmith. If one could forge a transcendent-grade divine artifact, one would be a great divine blacksmith. Those that could make holy-grade relics were skilled craftsmen. Those that could make supreme relics were skilled craftsmen. With that said, Lu Li asked with curiosity, "What is the evaluation of a master craftsman? Is there an even more heaven-defying divine artifact above the saint grade?" "You don't need to know that." Lu Yun waved his hand. "You will know when you become a skilled craftsman. What I want to tell you is that even a master craftsman will enjoy a high status in the divinity, let alone a master craftsman. When you go out, even the sect masters of the 72 divine sects will be very polite to you. Okay. You can go now." Lu Yun stood up and said, "Come back in half a year. As long as you don't make any mistakes, you can become official disciples and receive a salary." Lu Li and Qian Huanhan bid farewell to Lu Yun and walked out. Lu Li didn't want to stay outside for fear that he might run into Lady Dan and Long Yunhai. He planned to go back to Patriarch Gu's place. "Brother Li, you go back first. I'm going to meet a friend," Qian Huanhan suddenly said mysteriously. Lu Li frowned. "You have friends in the Chamber of Relics?" "Yes." Qian Huanhan grinned and said, "I have a friend who joined the Chamber of Relics 2 years ago. I'm going to ask him for some information." "Oh, go." Lu Li waved his hand and said, "Don't cause any trouble, okay? Even if someone bullies you, you have to endure it. If you really can't handle it, you can crush the jade talisman and I will come over immediately." Lu Li handed over a jade talisman. Qian Huanhan nodded gratefully and dashed toward the east courtyard. Lu Li walked toward Patriarch Gu's yard in a low-key manner. His journey was smooth. He ran into some disciples but none of them paid attention to him. Lu Li did not report to Patriarch Gu. Instead, he went back to his attic and went to his room to cultivate. After a while, Lu Li took out the wicked bead and let blood vines sneak into the ground. "Blood Fairy, try to change the inhibition formations in the room," Lu Li ordered Blood Fairy. After all, the inhibition formations here were built by Patriarch Gu. Lu Li was afraid that Patriarch Gu could monitor the situation in the room at any time. Therefore, he asked Blood Fairy to change the inhibition formations here. In this way his secret would not be exposed. Blood Fairy sneaked into the room and soon found the inhibition formations. She sensed them and said, "The inhibition formations in the room are just regular ones. Master, are you sure you want to change them?" "Yes." Lu Li made up his mind. He was not sure if Patriarch Gu would notice if he changed the inhibition formations. Even so, he must change them. Otherwise, all his secrets would be discovered by Patriarch Gu. How could Lu Li read the books left by Tianlingzi in secret? How could he forge artifacts secretly? Okay, Blood Fairy began to change the inhibition formations in the room. The changes were simple. In an hour, Blood Fairy had taken back her tentacles. Lu Li put away the wicked bead at once. Blood Fairy said, "Master, it's okay. I have made some changes. If someone tries to sneak past the inhibition formations to check on you, I will be able to tell." Okay. Luli was relieved. He sat down to cultivate. As a matter of fact, he was waiting for Patriarch Gu's reaction. After all, the inhibition formations here were built by Patriarch Gu. He might be able to notice. What? In the backyard, Patriarch Gu was reading an ancient book. When Blood Fairy finished modifying the inhibition formations, Patriarch Gu looked up and frowned at Luli. A moment later, Patriarch Gu snorted and murmured, "How dare she change the inhibition formations I built? But it seems to be good. Not even my psychic power can go in." Interesting. Patriarch Gu did not force his psychic power in. Otherwise, with the simple inhibition formations in the room, he could have seen Luli's every move. That being said, Blood Fairy would know. Everyone had their privacy. Patriarch Gu was not interested in Luli's privacy. 2 hours later, Luli received confirmation from Blood Fairy that no psychic power had come in. Luli was relieved. He took out a book on formations from the Wicked Bead and began to read. In a short period of time, Luli wanted to improve his knowledge of inhibition formations. In terms of combat abilities, he had no clue. He had made no progress after studying the Slayer's move and wind-related fundamental principle. Therefore, he planned to study inhibition formations and forging artifact. In order to gain a foothold in the Chamber of Relics, he must improve his skills in forging artifact. If he could not gain a foothold in the Chamber of Relics, when the Cabinet of Cloud came to him, would the Chamber of Relics offend the Cabinet of Cloud for him if he was a nobody with no value or status? Luli was not sure about this. More importantly, he had offended someone in the Chamber of Relics. If Lady Dan and the others could help, the Chamber of Relics might hand over the Wicked Bead. Therefore, to stay alive, Luli must gain a foothold in the Chamber of Relics as soon as possible. He might not become an influential figure, but at least, he should be worthy of the Chamber of Relics' protection. Inside the Wicked Bead was the lifelong collection of a master craftsman. That was Luli's greatest advantage. He believed that given some time, he could become a master craftsman or even a master craftsman. A moment later, the inhibition formation in Luli's room glowed. He put away the book and opened the door. Qian Huanhan was back. As soon as he came in, Qian Huanhan secretly activated the inhibition formation in the room. Then, he took out a stove, some basic materials, and a dozen books from his interspatial ring. "Brotherly, I have some materials on forging artifacts from my friends. I will give you some. With these, we can take our time to learn forging artifact. Sooner or later, we will all become master craftsmen." "Han, thank you." Chapter 1286. For the next 3 months, Luli and Qian Huanhan lived a peaceful and comfortable life. Qian Huanhan had learned to be smarter. Even though he would be beaten every now and then, he would remember the rules after a while. He would not make any more mistakes. During the 3 months, Patriarch Gu only came to Luli and Qian Huanhan 5 times. 3 times was for them to clean up, 1 time was for him to organize books, and the other time was for Patriarch Gu to grill meat and pour wine for him. After the last failure, Patriarch Gu never tried again. He would sit under the grape trellis and read all day long. He would not call Luli and Qian Huanhan if there was nothing important. Luli and Qian Huanhan would cultivate and study in their own room. Qian Huanhan had begun to learn, but Luli did not take any action. He knew that inhibition formations were the key to forging artifact. Without mastering inhibition formations, even if Luli could forge artifacts, he could only make low-grade relics of the lowest level, and the chances of failure would be high. Tian Lingzi had left behind many books in various fields. Luli started from the basics and mastered them bit by bit. During this time, Luli and Qian Huanhan did not go out. Therefore, Lady Dan and the others could not find a way to trouble them. Patriarch Gu had a strange temperament. Disciples would try their best to avoid him. Why would he come to Patriarch Gu's door? Qian Huanhan wanted to go out for a walk. After all, staying here was boring. But Lu Li stopped him. Lady Dan and the others had been waiting for a long time. If they went out now, they would be in trouble. To become a formal disciple, Lu Li must not make any mistakes in half a year. If he could become a formal disciple, Cabinet of Cloud might come after him. The Chamber of Relics would protect him. After all, if he could not protect a formal disciple, the other disciples would be disappointed. Cabinet of Cloud had been quiet recently. Was it because they did not find out who Lu Li was, or because they knew he was in the Chamber of Relics and did not dare to come? 4 days passed. Suddenly, there was some noise in the Valley of Relics. Lu Li activated the inhibition formation in his room and did not know. But Qian Huanhan was alarmed. Qian Huanhan walked out and woke Lu Li up. They walked out of the room and looked toward the entrance of the Valley of Relics. Many people were gathered there. Lu Li wondered what was going on. Go and find out what is going on. How can you make such a ruckus? A hoarse voice came. Qian Huanhan wanted to go and watch the fun. As soon as he heard Patriarch Gu's voice, he dragged Lu Li out of the room. Don't panic. Lu Li threw him a glance. His steps were steady. Qian Huanhan looked at Lu Li and slowed down as well. They walked toward the entrance of the valley unhurriedly. Many people had already gathered at the entrance of the valley, and some were even rushing towards the north of the valley. It seemed that something big had happened. Arriving at the small plaza at the entrance of the valley, Lu Li noticed that there were many people gathered there. From afar, he saw many people lying on the ground. Wrong. There were many corpses lying on the ground. Qian Huanhan noticed it too. He was shocked, and the two of them quickened their pace. Lu Li saw Lu Yun, Long Yunhai, and Lady Dan with a group of young ladies. All of them were angry. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan walked toward Lu Yun quietly. Lu Li cupped his fists and said, Brother Lu Yun, we are here on Patriarch Gu's orders. What is going on here? There's a brown blood mountain thousands of miles to the southeast. Lu Yun said solemnly, Brown Blood Mountain is where we produce special divine materials. A few days ago, a dozen disciples went there to collect the divine materials, but they were all killed. Furthermore, the corpses didn't seem to be killed by wild beasts. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan looked at each other, speechless. Disciples of the Chamber of Relics were killed? This was a serious matter, a provocation to the Chamber of Relics. Was there going to be a drastic change? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh at the north. Over a dozen beasts of the void flew away toward the southeast. Powerful warriors of the Chamber of Relics must have been sent out to collect information and find the murderer. Let's go back. Lu Li waved his hand and led Qian Huanhan back to Patriarch Gu's yard. At the yard, Lu Li asked Qian Huanhan to wait outside in case he said something wrong and was punished by Patriarch Gu. Lu Li went to the backyard and bowed. Patriarch, something happened at the Brown Blood Mountain. Over a dozen disciples were killed. I don't think they were killed by wild beasts. They were killed by humans. Brown Blood Mountain? Patriarch Gu was furious. He slapped the table and stood up. Who dares to make trouble at the Brown Blood Mountain? If anyone dares to destroy my brown blood crystals, no matter who it is, I will tear them apart. Qian Huanhan, get your ass in here! Patriarch Gu shouted all of a sudden. Qian Huanhan hurried over. Patriarch Gu took out a small beast of the void and threw it into the sky. The void beast quickly grew bigger. He shot out a stream of light and soared into the sky. He said in midair, Follow me to the Brown Blood Mountain. Yes. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan bowed. The beast of the void glowed, and Lu Li and Qian Huanhan were sucked in. The beast of the void dashed away. Patriarch Gu stayed in the small hall, while Lu Li and Qian Huanhan sat in the hall behind. Qian Huanhan was excited. After all, going out was better than staying in his room all day. Lu Li, on the other hand, was not happy at all. Instead, he was worried. He had a bad feeling. This was strange. What was the Chamber of Relics? It was a branch of the craftsman's sect. The Chamber of Relics itself was a force that could do whatever it wanted in southern divinity, not to mention the craftsman's sect. The Chamber of Relics enjoyed a high status. Not even the 72 sects dared to provoke the Chamber of Relic. Now, over a dozen disciples were killed? In the territory of the Chamber of Relic. This was a big joke. In any case, the Chamber of Relics would get to the bottom of it. They would not stop until they found the culprit. Even the 72 sects or other forces of the same level would suffer when they found out that the Chamber of Relics was responsible. After all, the Chamber of Relics was backed by a super force, the Craftsman's sect. Therefore, unless some forces wanted to court their own destruction, nobody would dare to touch disciples of the Craftsman's sect. Or, they might run into a crazy warrior who accidentally killed disciples of the Chamber of Relic. But the chances of that were slim. If Patriarch Gu had not taken action, Luli would not have been so alarmed. As soon as Patriarch Gu heard about the Brown Blood Mountain, he took them with him. How could it be so coincidental? Luli sensed a hint of a conspiracy. Maybe the enemies were here for him. Someone was plotting. The thing was the person not afraid that the Chamber of Relics would find him? Once he was found, not even the 72 sects would be able to stand the pressure. Luli suspected that this was a plot by the Cabinet of Cloud, Ling Faidu's grandpa, Ling Wanjian. What Luli could not figure out was why Ling Wanjian was so confident that the Chamber of Relics could not find any evidence. Besides, there were so many powerful warriors at the Brown Blood Mountain. How could Ling Wanjian assassinate Luli? If Ling Wanjian could not kill Luli, then what was the point of this plot? I must be careful, very careful. Chapter 1287. Brown Blood Mountain. As its name suggested, the entire mountain was made of rock. The brownish-red rocks looked as if they were made of brown blood. The Brown Blood Mountain was a huge mountain range. The soil here was special and could produce some special materials. The rarest of them was the brown blood crystal. The brown blood crystal had no other uses. Its only use was to refine weapons. Moreover, he did not need to refine weapons normally. The one who used it the most was Elder Gu. Elder Gu had a unique refining method. He could refine a special divine artifact called the Heavenly Thunder Bringer. As the name suggested, Thunderbringer could summon thunderbolts to kill the enemy. This relic could only be used once, but it was very powerful. Once Thunderbringer was activated, even a super warrior from the sacred realm would not dare to go against it. Otherwise, they would be killed mercilessly. The brown blood crystal was one of the necessary materials to make Thunderbringer. Therefore, when Elder Gu heard that something happened at the Brown Blood Mountain, he flew into a rage and rushed over with Lu Li and Qian Huanhan. You two wait here and monitor the surroundings. Inform me immediately if there is anything unusual. When they arrived at the Brown Blood Mountain, Elder Gu did not bring Lu Li and the others in. Instead, he opened the gate of the Beast of the Void and let Lu Li and Qian Huanhan down. At the same time, he gave them 2 golden jade talismans. The Beast of the Void left. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan looked at each other, confused. Since he had brought them here, why did he leave them in the periphery? Was there a secret in the Brown Blood Mountain? Could they not let the low-level disciples know? Whoosh whoosh in the distance, a group of warriors in silver armor ran over. Their psychic thoughts had locked onto the two from far away. They surrounded the two. Lu Li saw the symbol on their armor. He took out his identity jade talisman and said, "Guys, we are also disciples of the Chamber of Relics. We came here with Elder Gu. These are our identity jade talismans." The disciples glanced at Lu Li's and Qian Huanhan's jade talismans. They calmed down. A leader said, "Don't wander around. Something happened in the Brown Blood Mountain. The place is cordoned off. If you dare to go in, you will be killed. Yes. Luli cupped his hands. This team should be the disciples of the battle hall. They flew off in another direction. Obviously, they were in charge of patrolling the perimeter. I can't just stay here like a fool. Luli thought for a moment. If he stood like this, if the enemy came for him, he would become a live target and would be easily killed. Little Han. Pointing to a cave on the left, Luli said, "You hide there, I'll go check out the surroundings." No. Qian Huanhan shook his head and said, "Let's go together. We can take care of each other if something happens. I have my reasons." "You won't go wrong if you listen to me," Luli said firmly. There was no doubt in his eyes. "All right," Qian Huanhan softened and reminded, "Brother Li, you have to be careful. Don't mess around. If you meet Miss Long Yunhai and Miss Dan, crush the jade talisman and look for Elder Gu." Qian Huanhan thought that Luli didn't want to go with him because she didn't want to drag him down. Luli nodded without explaining and flew away alone. After running for a few miles, the soul concealment armor appeared around his body, and he went into stealth mode. Swish, not long after he went into stealth mode, he heard some noises coming from the northwest sky. A beast of the void came from the sky. Luli looked at it from a distance and realized that this beast of the void was different from regular ones. It seemed to be smaller, but its speed was faster, and it looked very gorgeous from the outside. Whoosh, the beast of the void didn't stop. It dashed toward the interior of Brown Blood Mountain. It didn't go far when a dozen people flew up. All of them were wearing silver armors and their relic weapons were glowing. One of them shouted, "Who dares to trespass on Brown Blood Mountain? Leave or we will kill you." "You're blind, you dog." A cold female voice came. Then the beast of the void floated in the air and opened its mouth. A young lady in a yellow dress flew out with several young ladies. It was Miss Dan and Jiang Lianshu. Miss Dan and the others were all riding on white unicorns, the same unicorns that almost crashed into Luli. Those unicorns all had wings and were floating in the air. Miss Dan glanced at the disciples of the Hall of Battle and said, "You don't know me? Are you going to kill us?" "It's you, Miss Dan." The disciples of the Hall of Battle landed. The leader bowed with a bitter smile. "Miss Dan, why did you bring the young ladies here? This place is under curfew. Patriarch Tian said no one is allowed in." "Am I anyone?" A yellow bow appeared in Miss Dan's hand. "Even I can't go in? Are you sure?" The yellow bow in Miss Dan's hand glowed. A horrible energy came out from the bow. It seemed she would shoot the disciple if he dared to say no. "No!" The disciple made up his mind and said, "Miss Dan, you can't go in even if you kill me. The patriarchs have given me an order. If I disobey, it will be against the rules." Coldness rose in Miss Dan's eyes. She drew the bow with her other hand and aimed at the disciple. The other disciples changed their expressions, but the disciple in the lead stood there with his teeth clenched. He had no intention of dodging. Whoosh! At this moment, they heard a swooshing sound. A beast of the void flew over. Soon, the beast of the void arrived. After a flash, 4 or 5 people flew out. Luli hid in a ravine. He saw Long Yunhai, Long Wentian, and the others. They were riding something that looked like a chariot that could float in the air. "What's going on?" Long Yunhai glanced over the crowd. He was dignified. He looked at the disciple of the Hall of Battle and asked, "Yang Lei, what did you do to piss Miss Dan off?" "Greetings, brothers." Yang Lei cupped his hands and said, "I didn't piss Miss Dan off. The patriarchs and our hall master told us that no one is allowed in. But Miss Dan insisted." "Okay." Long Yunhai calmed down. He looked at Miss Dan and said, "Sister Dan, don't make things difficult for Yang Lei and the others. Let's wait outside. If we rush in recklessly, Patriarch Tian will scold us. What if Patriarch's son from the Hall of Law is in there? What if I insist on going in?" Miss Dan put away her bow and said, "Sisters, let's go. Let's see if they have the guts to kill us." This is a spoiled child. Lu Li shook his head. He had seen many spoiled young masters and young ladies like this in the Heaven Reverse universe. They were arrogant and liked to fool around. Boom, boom, boom. While Yang Lei was at a loss of what to do, an explosion came from the brown blood mountain. The earth trembled. Even Lu Li could feel it. Swish, in the depths of the mountain range in the distance, a startling bright light soared into the sky. It was a sword light. The sword light swept out like lightning and actually split several mountains in half. Patriarch's son is here. Long Yunhai and the others were frightened. Long Yunhai flew to Miss Dan and shouted, "The patriarchs are here. We must have encountered some powerful enemies. Let's go down and hide or we will be in trouble." Miss Dan did not care. An oval iron ball appeared in her hand. She snorted and said, "What are you afraid of? If any bastard dares to come, let him eat Thunder Trigger. Even a mighty warrior in the divinity will be killed in an instant." Chapter 1288. What? Lu Li was surprised to see the oval ball in Lady Dan's hand. Wasn't that the relic that Patriarch Gu failed to make the other day? Lady Dan had one as well? "Oh, my lady, put it away." Long Yunhai and the others were shocked to see that Lady Dan was holding the lightning trigger. Yang Lei and the others hurried to the sides. Long Yunhai said in a hurry, "Don't use it carelessly. Even a super mighty warrior in the divinity can kill it. Once the thunderbolts are activated, we will all turn into ashes." "Look at you." Lady Dan put away the oval ball and said, "I am not an idiot. Why would I use it when there are no enemies? I have used the lightning trigger and it can only cover a radius of 1 mile. We will be fine as long as I can throw it out." "Don't use it so casually." Long Yunhai exhaled. He forced a smile and said, "My dear sister Dan, let's go down there and hide, shall we? There is a fight going on. You will be scolded by the patriarchs if you go there." "All right." Lady Dan pouted. Jiang Lianxue put away the beast of the void and so did Long Yunhai. They flew down together. When they reached the ground, Lady Dan and the others even put the unicorns in. They must have space divine devices. But as young ladies of the Chamber of Relics, they must have more relics than they could use. They hid in a forest down there. Lu Li was not far away from them, only about 3 miles away. The fight was still going on in the mountains. Lu Li was not far away. Where should I hide? Lu Li thought about it and decided to hide near Lady Dan and the others. It was not that he coveted Lady Dan's beauty. It was just that it was easier to hide near Lady Dan and the others. Once enemies came close, they would pay attention to Lady Dan and Long Yunhai first. In this way, he could run away at once. Lu Li wanted to sneak into the depths of the mountains and hide near the patriarchs. After all, it would be safer to stay with a group of patriarchs. But now that there was a fight, he could not go and court death. It was safer to stay near Lady Dan. He snuck over without making any noise. In the forest, he found a ditch. He took out the wicked bead and dived in. The wicked bead fell to the bottom of the ditch. "I hope Ling Wanjian doesn't come personally," Lu Li thought to himself. As long as Ling Wanjian was not here in person, it should be fine. Warriors from the Chamber of Relics were all around. The average mighty warriors in the divinity would not be able to survive. That can't be right. If Ling Wanjian dares to act personally, once he is discovered, not only him, even High Heaven Pavilion will be in big trouble. Lu Li didn't know what tricks the enemy had up his sleeve. Or, was he overthinking? The enemy wasn't coming for him? Blood Fairy, how long can you extend your tentacles? How many tentacles can you stretch out? All of a sudden, Lu Li sent a message to Blood Fairy. She replied after some thoughts, "I have recovered. I can reach out hundreds of tentacles and the longest one can reach is 3 miles. Good. Extend your tentacles into the ground. Make sure you're 1,000 zhang away from the surface. Then, spread your tentacles out and sense the vibrations in the ground. Luli ordered. He had a feeling that if the enemies were to sneak around, they would come from underground. There were many disciples of the Chamber of Relics above ground. One careless move and they would be discovered. Blood Fairy reached out her tentacle from the wicked bead. Since it was just a shadow, it did not make any noise. Luli was 1 to 2 miles away from Lady Dan. Those over there would not notice. The tentacles extended downwards for thousands of feet before splitting into many more tentacles that spread out in all directions. Since the tentacles were just shadows, they did not cause any tremors on the ground. Luli waited quietly. There were still sounds of explosions in the depth of the mountain. He could vaguely hear people shouting. Luli was nervous. He could sense that Patriarch Gu and the others were strong. There must be many mighty warriors in the divinity among those patriarchs. If a group of mighty warriors in the divinity could not defeat them easily, then the enemies must be strong. Or were there many of them? Master, someone is coming. They are from underground and there are many of them, at least 10. I don't have the courage to check too much or they will notice. A moment later, Luli heard a message in his mind. Luli told Bloodvine to come back at once. He dashed out from the wicked bead and sneaked toward Lady Dan. 10 enemies? No matter how many there were, as long as there were no super mighty warriors in the divinity, they would not notice the cloaking armor. If so, Luli should be safe. Luli moved closer to Lady Dan. If the enemies were here, Lady Dan and the others would attract too much attention and he would be safer. Lady Dan and the others were hiding in the wood. But they did not seem nervous at all. They must be fearless. They did not have much fighting experience and thought that no one would dare to lay a finger on them because of their identities. Long Yunhai and the others were more vigilant than Lady Dan. They were checking the surroundings carefully, but none of them paid attention to the ground. Luli stopped 1,000 feet away from them. He used psychic power to check underground. Soon, he sensed some tremors. If it were not for Blood Fairy's warning, he would not have noticed it. The tremors were getting closer. The 10 enemies must be good at sneaking. Long Yunhai and the others did not notice them at all. Whoosh, after some thought, Luli took out a red leaf and threw it over. Even though it was just a leaf, it created a whistling sound in the air when Luli threw it. Something is wrong. Long Yunhai and the others were alerted at once. Lady Dan and the others were attracted by the red leaf. They all used their divine consciousness to scan the area. They were confused when they sensed that a red leaf was flying over, but they didn't find any enemy. That being said, everyone was wearing armors. Luli secretly checked and exclaimed to himself that the Chamber of Relics was rich and imposing. All of them were wearing supreme relics. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, the ground suddenly exploded and 10 black shadows flew out. Luli sneaked a glance and saw that they were actually 10 gnomes. They were very small and looked like children. They are not pure-blooded humans. They don't have pupils. Luli glanced into the eyes of one of them. They were all white with no pupils, which was quite a frightening sight. The 10 dwarfs all had daggers glowing in a dark blue glow. They aimed at one person and stabbed at them. Pupil-less monkeys. Long Yunhai cried out in surprise. He threw a ball in his hand up into the sky and hacked at one of them with his long saber. Bang, 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 bang. Lady Dan, Jiang Lianxue and the others were smashed away. Apart from Long Yunhai, the others were smashed away. But they did not sustain serious injuries. All of them were wearing supreme relic armors. It would be hard to inflict serious injuries. Boom! Chapter 1289. Pupilless monkeys were famous in southern divinity. It was just that Luli was new to the divinity and did not know much about them. This clan was born to be assassins, and they were also professional assassins. This race never appeared in the outside world. Once they did, they would receive a mission to assassinate. In other words, the pupilless monkeys were usually accompanied by assassinations. However, when you saw this clan, they were either there to assassinate you or the people nearby. Usually, they would not appear outside, and you would not be able to walk to the place where their tribe lived. Pupilless monkeys had been in the south of the immortal world for at least 1,000,000 years, and countless people had been assassinated by them. Countless experts had tried to find this race, but no one had been able to find where they were. This race had branches in all the big cities. There was only a small castle, and there was no one inside. As long as you put in the information of the person you wanted to assassinate, and then put in enough divine roots, you would be able to enter the castle. Once the pupilless monkeys accepted the mission, they would take action. If they failed to assassinate the target, they would have to pay double the amount of God source. If Luli had known who the pupilless monkey was, he would have known at once that the assassins were not coming for the Chamber of Relics, but him. The artifact pavilion had always kept a low profile. In the past 10,000 years, they had not made enemies with any major forces. Asking the pupilless monkey to help would mean risking offending the Chamber of Relics. It would definitely cost a lot, so the person who would help would definitely be a big force. After all, they would offend the Chamber of Relics. Hence, it was usually a deadly feud. Luli had killed Ling Fidu. That was a blood feud. Even if all the pupilless monkeys were captured, they would not reveal who the mastermind was. This had been proven over the past 1,000,000 years. If the mastermind was Ling Wanjian, then he wouldn't have to worry about being exposed. Bang, bang, bang. Lady Dan, Long Yunhai and the others were knocked away one after another. Lady Dan and the others were not killed, but they were all injured. All of them were scared and ran away crazily. They didn't dare to stay in the same place. Lady Dan led the other young ladies to the depth of the mountain. Some elders were coming to rescue them. Let's go. Luli didn't dare to stay here any longer. What if another group of pupilless monkeys popped up from the ground? The gears in his head turned quickly. He remembered that the group of pupilless monkeys had come out from the depths of the mountain. After some thought, he dashed toward the periphery of the mountain. He walked without the slightest sound of the wind, keeping a low profile as he floated in the ravine. Soon, he left the periphery of the mountain. He felt a slight sense of danger in the mountain. There were too many pupilless monkeys there, so he didn't dare to stay there any longer. They were 300 miles away from the mountain. Luli chose a small cave to hide in. He wanted to find Patriarch Gu and the others after the battle was over. Bang! Right at that moment, Luli felt the ground trembled and then the ground cracked. A pupilless monkey dashed out and tried to stab at him. This pupilless monkey is so strong. He should be close to the level of a mighty being in the God realm, right? In Luli's mind, there was a sense of danger that he had never felt before. This person's aura was too terrifying. He wanted to dodge, but he found that his body's movements were slow. He was actually suppressed by this person's aura. Bang! Luli's body was hit by a dagger. He felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. Even though he was wearing a transcendent grade divine artifact armor, he felt as if many of the bones in his back had been broken and his internal organs had been ruptured. His body was sent flying. Swish! The pupilless monkey caught up with Luli in a flash and stabbed at his head. Its pupilless eyes were filled with coldness. Luli felt a chill run down his spine. I am the enemy's target. Luli finally understood why he attacked Lady Dan and Long Yunhai to distract the patriarchs. The pupilless monkeys that attacked Lady Dan and Long Yunhai were not strong. This one was at least 10 times stronger. Buzzing, Luli's wicked bead glowed as the immortal's body came out. The immortal's body did not attack the pupilless monkey. Instead, the immortal's body held Luli in his arms and used his back to protect the pupilless monkey. Clank, clank, the dagger landed on the immortal's body's back, making a muffled sound and creating some sparks. The immortal's body's defense was no weaker than a supreme relic. It was almost impossible to crack the immortal's body's defense. Whoosh! The pupilless monkey moved quickly. Before Luli could react, he was stabbed in the chest. Luli felt another force as strong as a mountain. His ribs were shattered one by one, and his internal organs were completely ruptured. Blood gushed out of his mouth, and at this moment, he could even smell the scent of death. This pupilless monkey did not use any powerful skills or fundamental principles. The speed and strength alone were enough to drive Luli into despair. If Luli did not find a way, he would be killed soon. Buzzing, the wicked bead glowed in Luli's hand as he entered it. The immortal's body grabbed the wicked bead with one hand and punched at the pupilless monkey with the other. At the same time, Luli crushed Patriarch Gu's jade talisman. He was trying to buy himself some time. The wicked bead was in the immortal's body's hand. It would not be cracked anytime soon. When Patriarch Gu arrived, Luli would be safe. He was overthinking. The pupilless monkey's dagger and the immortal's body collided. Then, the pupilless monkey's other hand landed on the immortal's body's arm. Luli could not tell what kind of skill the pupilless monkey had used. The immortal's body's arm trembled uncontrollably. The wicked bead was smashed away. Bang! The pupilless monkey struck at the immortal's body. The immortal's body was smashed away. The pupilless monkey flew back to the wicked bead and stabbed at it for dozens of times. *T. The wicked bead's energy is running out fast. Luli checked the energy in the wicked bead and exclaimed to himself. He knew he must fight back or else the wicked bead would be cracked. He took out a blood crystal and sent the warlord skeleton over. This was the last blood crystal he had and it was precious. However, he had to use it now. Buzzing, the wicked bead glowed. Then, the warlord skeleton came out. The warlord skeleton was covered in a dark glare and reached at the pupilless monkey with its skeletal hands. What? The pupilless monkey was attacking the wicked bead when a skeleton appeared out of nowhere. The pupilless monkey's heart skipped a beat. He swung the dagger and hacked at the warlord skeleton's skeletal hands. Bang! There was a spark, but nothing happened to the skeletal hand of the war god skeleton. Instead, the skeletal hand grabbed the pupilless monkey's arm and crushed it. Hiss, hiss, the pupilless monkey gasped when he saw the giant skeletal hand twisting toward him, but his arm was broken bit by bit. He stepped back as fast as lightning. He sensed a fatal danger. If he did not step back, he would be killed by the warlord skeleton. Buzzing, Luli dashed out and put away the immortal's body at once. Then, he put away the warlord skeleton that could not move and the wicked bead. This was a dangerous move. If the pupilless monkey came back, Luli could still be killed. Woo! From the distance came a shrill noise. Then, a familiar psychic power came. It was Patriarch Gu's psychic power. Luli felt lucky that he came out in time. Otherwise, the immortal's body and the warlord skeleton would have been exposed. You want to run? Soon, Patriarch Gu saw the pupilless monkey running away. A glint of determination rose in Patriarch Gu's eyes. He took out an oval ball and threw it at the pupilless monkey. Lightning trigger. Chapter 1290. Swish, swish, the oval ball glowed in 7 colors. There seemed to be many streams of air flowing, colliding, and circling inside. The ball didn't emit any horrifying energy. It was just getting brighter and more dazzling. Boom, 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 all of a sudden, thunder rumbled in the sky. While retreating, Luli looked up and saw something appalling. Up in the sky, there were thunderbolts in 7 colors. The thunderbolts as thick as a human being whooshed down and went after the oval ball. Boom, 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 the thunderbolts struck down, covering an area with a radius of 1 mile around the oval ball. Hundreds of 7-colored thunderbolts struck down. All the flowers and trees within a radius of 1 mile were reduced to ashes and charred. Luli had retreated for a couple of miles. Even so, when the thunderbolts came down, He was so scared that his legs gave way and he fell to the ground. The seven-colored divine lightning struck down, bringing with it a world-destroying aura. That force made Lu Li's soul tremble with fear. He felt that even if he were 10 or 100 times stronger, he would still be smashed into pieces once he was struck by the thunderbolt. Nothing would be left of him. Just like that pupilless monkey. That pupilless monkey tried to dig into the ground to hide. However, as soon as the thunderbolts came down, he was suppressed. His legs were weak and he could not move. Eventually, he was struck by several thunderbolts and his body was reduced to ashes. Not even his bones were left. That is horrifying. Lu Li used psychic power to check. It was a barren land. There used to be some weeds and trees. Now, apart from the scorched land, there was nothing left. Are you okay? Patriarch Gu flew over. He stood next to Lu Li and asked with a frown, "Didn't I tell you to stay there? Why are you here?" Lu Li wiped the blood off the corner of his mouth and explained, "There were many dwarfs over there. I was chased by this dwarf, so I ran here. Thank you, Patriarch Gu, for saving me." Chased? Patriarch Gu frowned and asked in surprise, "You survived after being chased by this pupilless monkey for more than 300 miles? I think the pupilless monkey's arm was torn off. Did you do that?" Lu Li's heart skipped a beat. He realized he had gone overboard with his boasting. The pupilless monkey's combat power was very strong. Elder Gu could tell. He might not be as powerful as a mighty warrior in the divinity, but he was at least more powerful than an average immortal on the list. Lu Li was chased by this pupilless monkey for thousands of miles and he survived? Crippling his arm? This meant that Lu Li was more powerful than the average immortals on the list. Lu Li was only in his 30s, and it had not been long since he ascended to the immortal world. How could he be as strong as an immortal on the list? How could Elder Gu not be surprised? Lu Li thought quickly. He knew that there were many things that could not be explained. That pupilless monkey was so powerful. There was no way to explain why his arm was torn off. He could only grit his teeth and say, "Elder, I still have some tricks up my sleeve to protect myself. I was lucky enough to injure him. Of course, if it wasn't for Elder's timely arrival, I would have been dead." Patriarch Gu's eyes glowed. He was surprised. He didn't know that Lu Li could be so powerful. He took a look at Lu Li's armor and nodded. "Your armor is good. Even among supreme relics, it is good." Lu Li nodded and said. Boom, boom, from the east came some noises of explosion. Patriarch Gu thought about it and said, "Go into my interspatial artifact. Also, where is Qian Huanhan?" "Over there." Lu Li pointed to a direction. Patriarch Gu took out a relic that looked like a tower and took Lu Li in. After a flash of light, Lu Li found himself in an empty hall. There were several bookshelves in the corner with hundreds of books on them. Lu Li did not wander around. He sat in the corner and took out some healing pellets to take. Buzzing, a moment later, space trembled and Qian Huanhan was taken in. Seeing Lu Li covered in blood, Qian Huanhan asked with concern, "Brother Li, what happened? Did Lady Dan and the others do this?" "No." Lu Li shook his head. "It was a dwarf assassin. His eyes have no pupils. His speed and strength were horrifying. If it were not for Patriarch Gu, I would have died." "No pupils? A dwarf?" Qian Huanhan was taken aback. Pupilless monkeys. Which force did the Chamber of Relics offend? Asking the pupilless monkeys to fight against the Chamber of Relics comes at a great cost. I don't think they can do it without billions of divine sources. Billions of divine sources. Lu Li touched his nose embarrassedly. He asked about the pupilless monkeys in detail, and he was sure, it must be Ling Wanjian. Others wouldn't be so generous. This time, the pupilless monkey's target must be Lu Li. Lucky, Lu Li and Qian Huanhan were in Patriarch Gu's interspatial artifact. No matter how many pupilless monkeys there were, they could not hurt Lu Li and Qian Huanhan. Patriarch Gu's lightning trigger was appalling. Buzzing, a moment later, Luli noticed that space trembled again. 4 beautiful young ladies were teleported in. Luli and Qian Huanhan's eyes glowed. This was because the 2 beautiful young ladies were in a sorry state. Their inner robes had been shattered, leaving only the soft armor on the outside. The soft armors only covered their breasts and buttocks. Many parts of their bodies were exposed. Luli and Qian Huanhan could only see their fair skin. Jiang Lianxue was among them. Her robe was torn as well. From the side, half of her breasts could be seen. There were blood stains on them, which gave her an alluring and stimulating look. What are you looking at? I will gouge your eyes out if you keep looking. Jiang Lianxue blushed. She glared at Luli and Qian Huanhan. Lady Dan took out a sword. Glaring at Luli, she said, "Turn around or I will gouge your eyes out." Luli and Qian Huanhan looked at each other. They curled their lips and sat down. One of the young ladies who was not injured said, "Sister Lianxue, Sister Mingyu, hide your armors. I will treat you and change into clean clothes." Jiang Lianxue blushed even more. She glared at Luli and Qian Huanhan and said, "No." Lady Dan understood Jiang Lianxue's concerns. She walked to the back of Luli and Qian Huanhan with her sword. Pointing the sword at Luli and Qian Huanhan's heads, she said, "Lianxue, take care of your wounds and get changed. Otherwise, how are you going to get out? Don't worry, if they dare to use psychic power or peek, I will cut them to death." Luli and Qian Huanhan were speechless. They were not in the mood to peek. That being said, it would be too erotic for them to strip naked with 2 beauties behind them. All right, Jiang Lianxue and the other young lady made up their minds and hid their armors. They were completely exposed, but they reacted quickly. They took out some clothes to cover their private parts. However, right at that moment, the space inside began to tremble. 5 people came out. It was Long Yunhai and Long Wentian. Long Yunhai and Long Wentian were standing right in front of Jiang Lianxue when they came in. Several pairs of eyes looked at each other, and all of them quickly widened. Then 2 ear-piercing screams rang out from within. "Ah!" Hearing the screams, Luli and Qian Huanhan turned around out of instinct. They happened to see Jiang Lianxue and 2 young ladies bouncing up. 2 blood-stained bodies bounced up from the ground and 4 blood-stained white rabbits swayed in the air. Luli and Aqua Rose were dumbfounded by this scene. "Ah? Long Yunhai, you bastards! I will kill you!" Chapter 1291. Luli reacted quickly and turned around at once. At the same time, he pulled Qian Huanhan. Qian Huanhan came to his senses and turned around as well. He winked at Luli with a wretched look. Luckily, Lady Dan and the others were looking at Long Yunhai and didn't notice Luli and Qian Huanhan. Long Yunhai came to his senses and quickly moved to the side. At the same time, he shouted, "Sister Dan, don't do anything rash. We were just teleported in. We didn't mean to." Right. Long Yunshan nodded like a chicken pecking rice, but he was still staring at Jiang Lianxue's body. He waved his hand and said, "Lady Dan, don't be rash. We didn't see anything." Luli and Qian Huanhan looked at each other speechlessly. They used their psychic powers to check and saw Long Yunshan's eyes. Bang! Lady Dan was enraged when she saw Long Yunshan's reaction. She swung her sword at Long Yunshan's shoulder. But Long Yunshan was wearing a low-rank relic armor. He was only smashed away and was not injured. Jiang Lianxue and the other young lady finally came to their senses. They quickly covered their private parts with their dresses. Long Yunshan and the others didn't dare to look anymore. Long Yunshan crawled up, cupped his fists and begged Lady Dan, "Lady Dan, please stop. You will kill me." Lady Dan rushed over. She put away her sword, clenched her fists and said, "Put the armor back into your body or I will make you regret it." Long Yunshan looked at Miss Dan with a wronged face. She was like an angry lion cub. He then looked at Long Yunhai and the others with hidden bitterness, as if he was silently saying that he wasn't the only one who saw it. Why did Miss Dan vent her anger on him? Long Yunhai pretended that he didn't see anything. The others didn't want to talk to him either. Their attitude was clear. Miss Dan had to vent her anger. Long Yunshan had hit the muzzle of the gun. If he didn't vent Miss Dan's anger, today's matter wouldn't be over. All right, Long Yunshan looked like he was about to cry. He had no choice but to put the armor back into his body. Lady Dan immediately rushed over like a little lion and punched Long Yunshan in the face. Long Yunshan flew away like a broken sack. His teeth and blood spilled out. Whoosh! Miss Dan didn't stop after punching him. She dashed forward and started punching and kicking Long Yunhai. Long Yunhai couldn't stop screaming as many of his bones were broken. On the other side, Jiang Lianxue and that young miss quickly put on their robes. Their eyes were filled with tears. They were both young misses who had yet to be married, but now they had been seen by a few men. How were they going to face others in the future? Ah, stop hitting me. If you keep hitting me, I'm going to die. There was not a single piece of good flesh on Long Yunshan's body. Many of his bones were broken as he screamed miserably. Long Yunhai couldn't stand it anymore, but he didn't plead with Miss Dan. He turned around and cupped his hands. Sister Shui, Sister Yu, Yunshan didn't do it on purpose. We were also just teleported in. Everything was a misunderstanding. We will apologize to the two sisters later. Try to persuade Sister Dan. If this continues, Yunshan will be beaten to death. Right now, a group of elders is still chasing after the pupilless monkeys. Don't make the elders angry. Jiang Lianxue didn't say anything, but Meng Yu couldn't bear it. She thought about it, then gritted her teeth and said, Sister Dan, let's just forget it. Bang! Miss Dan gave him one last kick. She then looked at Long Yunhai and the others angrily and said, None of you can say a word about what happened today. Or else, Of course. Long Yunhai said with a righteous face, Nothing happened today. If anyone dares to say anything, I will skin him alive. Do you understand? Long Wentian and the others had already gone to heal Long Yunshan. They nodded when they heard what Long Yunshan said. Jiang Lianxue and the others looked better, but Miss Dan still looked gloomy. Long Yunhai turned to Lu Li and the others and said, Sister Dan, we know the severity of some things. I'm just afraid that someone will spread rumors, damn. Lu Li and Qian Huanhan's faces instantly changed. They could feel that Miss Dan and the others were staring at them with murderous eyes. Miss Dan was even walking toward them. Treacherous. Lu Li cursed in his mind. Long Yunhai was good at shifting the target. Once he said something, Miss Dan and the others would turn their attention to them. They might even vent their anger on them. At this crucial moment, Lu Li's mind was thinking quickly, and he quickly came up with an idea. He secretly gave Qian Huanhan an eye signal and pointed at Qian Huanhan's ear. He then closed his eyes and entered the ethereal state, blocking off all six senses. Qian Huanhan looked at Lu Li from the corner of his eyes. When he realized what was going on, he shut off all six senses as well. Just as Lu Li entered the ethereal state, he felt his body was sent flying by a kick. Fortunately, his dragon armor automatically appeared to protect him. He might have smashed onto the wall, but he didn't suffer much damage. Lu Li opened his eyes in confusion and shook his head. He asked, Who attacked me? Her, Miss Dan snorted and walked toward Lu Li. She said coldly, It was me. Do you have a problem with that? Lu Li frowned and said, Why did Miss Dan attack me? What did I do wrong? Miss Dan sneered and said, You didn't do anything wrong. But you heard something you shouldn't have and saw something you shouldn't have. What did you say? Lu Li said in confusion, You asked us to turn around, and we immediately shut off all six senses. We didn't know what happened just now. Shut off all six senses? Miss Dan paused and blinked her eyes in confusion. She then looked at Qian Huanhan and saw that he didn't do anything. She started to believe him and asked with a frown, "Are you sure you aren't lying to me?" "Why would I lie to you?" Lu Li said with a righteous expression, "See no evil and hear no evil. This is the basic principle of being a human." "What happened just now? Why did senior brother Yunhai and Wentian come in? Why is senior brother Yunshan injured?" "Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Continue to cultivate and mind your own business." Miss Dan waved her hand impatiently. Lu Li walked back embarrassedly and sat cross-legged with Qian Huanhan as they continued to cultivate. Miss Dan thought for a while and walked to Long Yunhai and the others. She said, "We can't just let it go like this. I will ask an elder to erase your memories. Otherwise, Sister Shui and Sister, you won't be able to face anyone." This, Long Yunhai and the others had a slight change in expression. If their memories were erased, their memories wouldn't be complete. Nothing serious might happen, but it might affect their cultivation in the future. The problem was, what could they do? They couldn't just say that they shut off all 6 senses like Lu Li and didn't see or feel anything, right? "Awesome, brotherly." Qian Huanhan quietly opened his eyes and gave a thumbs up. His lips moved slightly as he mouthed a few words. The two of them had seen everything just now, and it wasn't just a waste of time. It was also because of Lu Li's quick thinking and didn't have any worries. Qian Huanhan was really impressed by Lu Li. This kid has a quick reaction. It was noisy inside, and no one knew what was going on. Elder Gu didn't care about Jiang Lianxue and Mingyu's naked bodies at all, and there wasn't a trace of ripple in his heart. Instead, he praised Lu Li's quick reaction. Chapter 1292. The battle outside was coming to an end. This time, many patriarchs came from the Chamber of Relic. To become a patriarch, one must not only be accomplished in forging artifacts, but also in combat abilities. Lu Li was right. Inhibition formations and fundamental principles were similar. Both relied on laws of heaven and earth and force to release powerful skills. Therefore, powerful artificers would not be weak in combat. That was why the Chamber of Relics enjoyed a unique status at the south of the divinity. If the Chamber of Relics only had artificers but not powerful warriors, it would have been destroyed a long time ago. Almost all of the patriarchs were as powerful as mighty warriors in the divinity. Many of them were from the Hall of Warfare. Even though there were quite a number of pupilless monkeys, more than half of them were killed. The rest escaped underground. It was difficult to hunt them down. That being said, some disciples of the Hall of Warfare died and Lady Dan and the others were injured. The patriarchs of the Chamber of Relics were enraged. They flew around in a frenzy, looking for pupilless monkeys to kill. Patriarch Gu did not go after them. Instead, he patrolled around. For him, the brown blood crystals were the key. As long as the brown blood crystals in the Brown Blood Mountain were safe, he would not mind losing some disciples of the Hall of Warfare. Collect all the formed brown blood crystals. Patriarch Gu waved his hand and told disciples of the Hall of Warfare to collect brown blood crystals in the depth of the mountain. Those brown blood crystals could be used to make many lightning triggers. If they were destroyed, it would be a great loss. The other patriarchs came back after half a day of hunting. There were many pupilless monkeys. Even if all the enemies were killed, there were still many in their species. Many patriarchs shouted in anger. They wanted to find the pupilless monkeys and wipe them out. This was the only way to appease the patriarchs and restore the reputation of the Chamber of Relics. But nobody wanted to go after the culprit. In history, none of the culprits that hired the pupilless monkeys had ever been exposed. The pupilless monkeys had a good reputation. The captured pupilless monkeys would commit suicide at once. They would not even have a chance to search their souls. Patriarch Gu did not mind. He ordered people to collect the brown blood crystals in person. After half a day, all the brown blood crystals were collected. Patriarch Gu rode on the beast of the void and flew to the Valley of Relics with Luli, Lady Dan, and the others. Many patriarchs went with him. They could not make the decision themselves. They had to report to the Chief of Relics and the Hall of Relic. When Patriarch Gu came back, he let Lady Dan and Long Yunhai out. He brought Luli and Qian Huanhan back to the manor. He left the two of them aside and entered the Divine Materials Hall to get busy. When the elders came back, they reported the news to their superiors. They also reported that Miss Dan and the others had been attacked. The leader of the Chamber of Relics was enraged. He slammed the table and stood up. Then, he took the teleportation device and left. It was said that they would go to the Craftsman's sect to report such a terrible thing to the Craftsman's sect and ask the Craftsman's sect to use their power to find the place of the pupil-less monkeys or find the culprit behind the scenes. All of the chief of the scholars of relics at the sect, in and outside in the southern parts of the chambers, of masters of the sect of relics, the spirits and of, and the entire southern divinity was stirred. No wonder Craftsman's sect was one of the 4 legendary forces. They could offer a holy relic. Many masters and leaders did not even have a holy relic. Holy relics were hard to come by. They could not be bought even with divine sources. Craftsman's sect strictly controlled the quantity. Only 3 pieces would be auctioned in every 100 years. Divine sources were not enough to buy one. Many people took actions. They searched for the pupil-less monkeys all over the world. As for the culprit, they could not find him. Basically, they could not find him. The pupil-less monkeys must be a powerful warrior from a major force. How could they leave behind any evidence or clues? What happened outside had nothing to do with Luli and Qian Huanhan. They cultivated in the manor. Luli felt lucky that he was not killed this time. Maybe his plan was not perfect. Next time, he would not be so lucky. Master, someone is trying to use psychic power. On the 3rd day, Luli was alarmed by Blood Fairy's message. He put away the book at once. Luli, come here, Patriarch Gu said. Luli got up and went to the backyard. Patriarch Gu sat under the grape trellis with a dagger in his hand. When Luli came, he handed the dagger to him and said coldly, "Cut your finger and let a drop of blood out." Luli was surprised. What did Patriarch Gu want his blood for? Luli hesitated. Patriarch Gu pulled a long face and said angrily, "What? I don't want to." Luli made up his mind and cut his finger. A drop of blood dripped down. Patriarch Gu put away the blood and waved his hand. "Go back and cultivate. Do not leave this manor without my permission." "Yes." Luli cupped his fists and left. He went back to his room but did not cultivate. Instead, he secretly used psychic power to check outside. Whoosh! All of a sudden, he felt a tremor in space. A man flew up from the backyard. He hurriedly got up and walked out. Just as he had expected, he saw Elder Gu leap out and rush into the plaza. He entered the teleportation array and left. What is Patriarch Gu doing? He wants a drop of my blood and then he is gone? What is he trying to do? Luli was confused. Patriarch Gu's behavior was so strange that Luli could not figure it out. What could a drop of blood do? Could Patriarch Gu find out his identity from a drop of blood? Why would Patriarch Gu want to find out his identity? Luli stood at the door for an hour but still could not figure it out. He gave up thinking. He went back to his room, activated the inhibition formation and continued to read books on inhibition formations. Luli lost track of time while he was reading. Soon, 4 or 5 days had passed and Patriarch Gu had not come back. Luli was confused. He thought for a while but could not come to a conclusion. He went back to studying inhibition formations. Another 5 days later, Patriarch Gu finally came back. As soon as he came back, He sent a message for Luli to go over. He is here. Luli's heart skipped a beat. He had many questions. Maybe Patriarch Gu would answer them later. Luli wondered if it was a good thing or a bad thing. If it was a blessing, it was not a curse. If it was a curse, he could not avoid it. Luli made up his mind and walked to the backyard. Patriarch Gu stood under the grape trellis, emotionless. When Luli came, Patriarch Gu took out the pagoda and took Luli into the interspatial artifact. This time, Luli came to another side hall. There was a throne here. Patriarch Gu sat on the throne, looked at Luli coldly and said, "Should I call you Luli, or Lilu, or Lulin?" Swish, Luli turned ghastly pale. Patriarch Gu really went to look into his identity, and he found out everything with just one drop of blood. Luli forced himself to calm down. Since Patriarch Gu had taken him to the interspatial artifact, it meant that he did not want today's conversation to be leaked. In other words, Patriarch Gu was the only one who knew about Luli's identity. On this thought, Luli felt more confident. He bowed and said, "Patriarch Gu, I did not mean to hide it. I was forced to do so." Chapter 1293. Patriarch Gu's expressions did not change. He stared at Luli coldly without saying a word, which scared Luli. He had no more blood crystals, and he could not use the warlord's skeleton. If Patriarch Gu wanted to kill him, Luli would have to resign himself to his fate. Patriarch Gu stared at Luli for the time for half an incense stick to burn before he said coldly, "Did you really just ascend? Why did you kill prefecture warriors?" Luli nodded. "Yes. Before I ascended, I offended several immortals. After I ascended, one of them happened to find out where I was. She colluded with a prefecture warrior to kill me. I had no choice but to kill the prefecture warrior and run away." Patriarch Gu nodded and asked another question. "Then why did you kill Ling Faidu?" Luli put on a bitter expression. How could Patriarch Gu find out about this? Luli thought about it and said, "Patriarch, Lu Shi and Holy Princess both know about this. They tried to kill me several times in the tomb of King Luna. I had no choice but to kill them. Later, I joined the Chamber of Relics. Patriarch Gu, you should know why. Only by joining the Chamber of Relics can the Cabinet of Cloud not kill me in broad daylight." You sure have a good plan." Patriarch Gu snorted. "Then," he said, "the incident at the Brown Blood Mountain must have been arranged by Ling Wanjian, right? It is a pity that I have no proof. Otherwise, even Ling Wanjian would have to die." Luli didn't dare to answer. He just stood there quietly, waiting for Patriarch Gu's punishment. He knew the situation was dangerous. One wrong word and he could be killed or expelled from the Chamber of Relic. Patriarch Gu said nothing again. Luli was unsettled. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Patriarch Gu finally asked, "Given your current abilities, will you be able to kill an immortal on the list?" Luli did not know how to answer Patriarch Gu's sudden question. After a moment of hesitation, Luli made up his mind and said, "Usually, it is okay. I killed Ling Faidu and I destroyed that pupilless monkey's arm. But, if it were not for your timely help, I would not have been a match for him. I would have been killed." Patriarch Gu was expressionless. Luli could not tell if he was happy or angry. Luli stood there, trembling. After a moment, Patriarch Gu asked again, "If you were given another chance, would you kill Ling Faidu again?" When Patriarch Gu said this, a glint of killing intent rose in his eyes. Invisible energy spread out. Luli's body tensed up. He knew that this was a crucial moment. If he answered this question incorrectly, he would most likely be killed with a single slap. His mind was frantically working, trying to understand why Elder Gu would ask this question. Could it be that he had some kind of relationship with High Heaven Pavilion? Or was Patriarch Gu trying to see if Luli was? After thinking about it, Luli finally clenched his teeth and said, That's just how I am. I don't usually cause trouble, but if someone tries to kill me, I will fight back. If I were to be again and Ling Faidu again, he would kill him. Lu Li Gu and said. Not. With that said, Lu Li relaxed. He closed his eyes and cleared his mind. If Patriarch Gu wanted to kill him, Lu Li would accept it. Elder Gu didn't make a move, but his killing intent was still very strong. Time slowly passed. After a while, Elder Gu said coldly, If I sent you to kill someone now, would you have the guts to do it? Lu Li was surprised. Patriarch Gu, who do you want me to kill? Patriarch Gu answered with a straight face, Jiang Ruodin. Who is Jiang Ruodin? Lu Li frowned. Then, he understood and asked, Lady Dan? Patriarch Gu nodded. Lu Li's mouth twitched. He felt a headache coming on. What was wrong with Patriarch Gu? How could he send Lu Li to kill Lady Dan? Lu Li thought for a while. Then, he made up his mind and said, Lady Dan and I have some history, but she did not want to kill me. So, I cannot kill her. If you don't kill her, I will kill you. Patriarch Gu's hand glowed in a dark light. He said with killing intent, I will give you one chance. Kill her or die. Lunatic, Lu Li shouted to himself. He looked at Patriarch Gu with bloodshot eyes and said, Patriarch Gu, please grant me death. Aren't you supposed to be very courageous? You even killed Ling Faidu. Why don't you kill Jiang Ruodin? Patriarch Gu did not take action. This is not a matter of courage. Lu Li shook his head. I am a man who has a clear conscience. If she is my enemy or an unpardonable villain, I will kill even the masters of the 72 sects as long as I have the ability. Lady Dan and I do not have any deep hatred. I cannot do it. Masters of the 72 sects? How arrogant! Patriarch Gu sneered. After a pause, he said, Then do you have the guts to kill the future master of the Palace of Evil Spirit? I can guarantee that this man is unpardonable. He bullies the weak, rapes and kills young girls. He has done many evil things that cannot be tolerated in heaven and earth. Lu Li didn't understand Patriarch Gu's purpose today. Lu Li thought about it and said, If I have the ability and I can survive, and if I am sure that this man is wicked beyond redemption, I will kill him. Good. Patriarch Gu stood up. Lu Li, I will give you two options. First, I will report you to the chief. The Chamber of Relics will not kill you, but you will be expelled. By then, Ling Wanjian will try everything he can to kill you. Second, you help me kill the future master of the Palace of Evil Spirit, Chou Qianjun. Finally, the fox had shown its tail. Lu Li finally understood Patriarch Gu's intention. The first option was obvious. If he was expelled from the Chamber of Relics in a few months, Cabinet of Cloud would hunt him down. The second option was the only option. Lu Li was not stupid. He would not say yes easily. He forced a smile. Patriarch, the Palace of Evil Spirit is one of the 72 sections. I may have the courage, but I do not have the ability. Besides, I killed the future master of the Palace of Evil Spirit. Once I am exposed, I will be hunted down by the Palace of Evil Spirit. No. Patriarch Gu waved his hand. If you kill Chou Qianjun and your identity is exposed, not only will you be hunted down by the Palace of Evil Spirit, but also the Space-Time Office. That is because the Palace of Evil Spirit is affiliated with the Space-Time Office. Lu Li rolled his eyes. Space-Time Office was one of the 4 legendary forces. Even the Chief of Chamber of Relics would have to face death if he offended the Space-Time Office. Patriarch Gu did not look at Lu Li. He asked in sorrow, Do you know who is buried in the grave in my backyard? Lu Li nodded but did not answer. Patriarch Gu was even more sorrowful. In that new grave are the blood clothes of my son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter. It is a cenotaph. My son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter were killed by Chou Qianjun because he was interested in my granddaughter. What? Lu Li was taken aback. If Cho Qianjun has done such evil deeds, why didn't you report to the craftsman's sect and ask for justice? There is no proof. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.